Very good morning. 6 o'clock on Thursday, the 22nd of January. These are your headlines this hour. President Trump calls off his tariff threat on Europe, claiming to have hashed out a NATO deal on Greenland.
The world wants to know how you did the deal, sir.
It'll be explained, but it's a really good deal for everybody.
Police hope new DNA evidence will help catch Dan Sindle's murderer in a case that saw one man wrongly imprisoned for 4 decades. Residents rage against Southeast Water in Tunbridge Wells after repeated issues, but still no word from $40,000 a year boss David Hinton. And at 6:40, we'll see what's making the headlines in today's papers with the CEO of the Phoenix Project, Charlotte Hill. Very good morning to you. Donald Trump has spared European countries from tariffs for now after agreeing to a framework for the future of Greenland. The US president said he came to an agreement with the NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte over the island's future, although it isn't clear where Denmark stands. Our correspondent Paul Kelso is in Davos and has the latest.
Mr. President, how did you do the deal? Come and tell us how you did the deal, sir.
It's a good deal, fair deal for everybody. I think it's a very good deal.
Are the tariffs off the table completely now, sir? Can the people of the UK rest assured the deal's gone?
Based on the fact that it looks like we have the concept of a deal.
Donald Trump came to Davos threatening to claim Greenland by any means necessary. 7 hours after he arrived, he claimed to have struck a deal over the future of the territory, taking tariffs and military action off the table.
It's a long-term deal. It's the ultimate long-term deal. And I think it puts everybody in a really good position, especially as it pertains to security and minerals and everything else.
After a false start in Washington, the president descended into Davos late, heightening anticipation for a speech that had European allies hanging on every word. He began with a familiar takedown of the continent and its economies.
Friends come back from different places. I don't want to insult anybody and say I don't recognize it. And that's not in a positive way, in a very negative way. And I love Europe, and I want to see Europe go good, but it's not heading in the right direction.
And on Greenland, he restated his claim, but removed the threat of military action.
I'm seeking immediate negotiations to once again discuss the acquisition of Greenland by the United States, just as we have acquired many other territories throughout our history, as many of the European nations have. We probably won't get anything unless I decide to use excessive strength and force, where we would be, frankly, unstoppable. But I won't do that. They have a choice. You can say yes, and we will be very appreciative, or you can say no, and we will remember.
There was criticism too of the UK and its energy policy. The president telling Sky News they were simply home truths.
Very disrespectful of Europe and the UK, sir. Why?
No, I'm not, but they have to change their ways.
His foremost American critic may have seen the climb down coming.
You think you saw him back off?
You're going to continue to have to do, he removed the one card that we knew was never real in the first place.
Europeans, meanwhile, were hoping for dialogue rather than another lecture.
What is your message to him?
My message to him is it's time to calm down and find a way forward to work on natural resources together.
Even Trump's energy secretary may have been surprised by the speed of the deal.
The key thing for the president, this is very long term. He's trying to get to the right place that's a win for America and win for our allies abroad. I don't know the time frame. The right result is the most important thing.
Why the change of heart on tariffs, Mr. Lutton?
The truth.
Can you explain why you've climbed down?
And wait until the president got here. You all jump the gun.
Once it came, senior administration officials were jubilant. A day really is a long time in Davos.
Let's bring in our political correspondent, Amanda Acas. And Amanda, it's all changed. It's slightly unclear as to what that change is. And the UK and Sir Keir Starmer will also be waiting to see if that threat of the tariffs really has gone away.
Well, yes, absolutely. I mean, I think for now there is a real sense of relief in London and other European capitals that, for now at least, it sees the immediate threat has been dialed down and their approach to stand united and stand firm has really paid off. But as you say, there isn't really any detail or any real clarity of what exactly was discussed and agreed between Donald Trump and Mark Rutte in their meeting yesterday. Was it just a case of talking the US president down from the precipice, as it were? And Mark Rutte's been speaking to Fox News about this, and when asked, well, what was agreed in terms of whether or not Greenland is still part of the Kingdom of Denmark, which of course goes to the heart of all of this, he came back with a rather extraordinary answer that didn't even really come up. Let's have a listen.
That issue did not come up anymore in my conversations tonight with the President. We very much focused on what do we need to do to make sure that that huge Arctic region, where change is taking place at the moment, where the Chinese and Russians are more and more active, how we can protect that. That was really the focus of our discussion. Well, I think tonight was a good night, and we have a good agreement to really start working on these issues. And that means that we both agreed, when you look at NATO and what NATO collectively can do to make sure that the whole Arctic region is safe, including Greenland, to work on that part.
Now, I think Sir Keir Starmer really sees this outcome as a bit of a vindication of his approach and indeed across government, the diplomatic efforts that have been going on behind the scenes to kind of talk tough. And indeed, it was a much tougher line we heard from the PM than we ever have before in terms of Trump telling him he was completely wrong, and yesterday PMQ saying he would not yield over the issue of Greenland, but also avoiding being overtly provocative or critical, as perhaps some of the other European leaders, President Macron in particular, have been. And I think Mark Rutte's approach is very similar to Sir Keir Starmer's, and we just heard him there talking about the importance of other NATO allies doing a lot more in terms of the security of the high Arctic, which is something that we've heard Sir Keir Starmer talking about repeatedly as well. Now, today he's having a visit from Mette Frederiksen, the Prime Minister of Denmark, close ally of the UK, of course, and I'm sure they're going to be discussing this in much more detail, as you would imagine, and working out where exactly this leaves us. Clearly, the NATO alliance has been really seriously damaged by this episode, and trust across the Atlantic more broadly. But I think for the Prime Minister, he kind of sees this as kind of a vindication of the fact that other politicians in the UK, for example, the Liberal Democrats in particular, really calling for him to burn that relationship with the US and to end the kind of so-called special relationship and be much firmer. And I think that's something that he didn't want to do, and is hoping that that attempt to forge that kind of personal connection and the ability to speak to Donald Trump on the phone is something that has ultimately, he hopes, paid dividends, but it's also reinforced just quite how mercurial and changeable the situation is with Donald Trump in the White House. And one other issue to raise is the Chagos Islands. So we know that Donald Trump the other day woke up, the UK woke up to find that Donald Trump had put out a message saying it was an act of great stupidity of the UK to agree to hand Mauritius, hand the islands to Mauritius, but pay to lease the airbase that's jointly held by the US and the UK. That's a domestic political issue that's very controversial. We've heard Kemi Badenoch talking about it in PMQs. For now, the Prime Minister's response has been to say, no, this is part of Donald Trump's negotiation, effectively to accuse her of almost being unpatriotic by going along with that bandwagon, as he put it. But I think domestically, that's where a lot of questions are going to focus going forward too.
Amanda, really appreciate it. Thank you so much. That's Amanda Acas in Westminster. Plenty more from the gang from 7. The summit is on many of the front pages of the papers. Let's start with The Guardian. That's the headline. Trump claims that framework of future deal on Greenland agreed. Like we're saying, they're not entirely sure what that deal is. It's on the front page of The Telegraph too, actually. Trump strikes Greenland deal, so says the paper. The Financial Times looking at the tariffs, saying that President Trump will not impose tariffs on February the 1st on the European countries, 8 of them, after agreeing that Greenland deal framework, as it's been described, with NATO's Mark Rutte. The Mirror focuses on the speech given by the President in Davos, calling it, quote, a delusional rant, daddy fool, the front page on the paper there. The Mail reporting Donald Trump could offer Greenlanders $1 million each. Any more details on that, of course, we'll bring it to you. Any more in the papers? Well, you're going to get that. 6:40, we'll have the news review. Stick with us for that a little later, half an hour's time. Now then, the number of people using medication to treat ADHD tripled in the UK between 2010 and 2023. Let's bring in Sadia Chowdhury, who's got more details. Sadia.
So, look, these figures sound alarming, but some people are saying there's actually something here to celebrate. I'll talk to you about that in a second, but first of all, let's talk about the study. It's been done by academics at Oxford University. They looked at the use of ADHD medication in 5 European countries, including the UK, and they say that more people are using ADHD medication, a lot more people. They say so the experts say that we've gone from 0.12% of use to 0.39% of use in the 13 years between 2010 and 2023. That is a 3-fold increase. ADHD medication use is still higher among men, but that gap is closing. They say women in the UK had one of the highest rates of increase in use. And by the way, they've looked at 5 European countries, so the UK, they're leading. And they also noted an increase of ADHD medication use among children aged in both the age categories of 3 to 11 and the age category of 12 to 17. And here's why some people say this is something to celebrate. Some leading charities saying that it reflects an increase in awareness, particularly about diagnosis in women who often get diagnosed quite late in their school years, and then they're having to play catch up when it comes to treatment. And the researchers say it also helps in terms of supply and demand issues, because since September 2023, there's been a global shortage of ADHD medication. And so they say this will help to anticipate demand, but also prevent future shortages and understand which parts of the population need closer monitoring. And you may remember in December, the government launched a specific review, an independent review into the rising demand for mental health, ADHD and autism services. That is ongoing, and I should say it is separate to this study. There is an alarming side note to this study, which says that in the UK and Spain, over 70% of people aged over 25 had previously used antidepressants. The authors said that the UK had the highest relative increase of all the countries that they studied.
Sadia, good to have you with us. Sadia Chowdhury in our Westminster studio. And now then, after a major water outage in Kent and Sussex the last week or so, locals have been venting their anger. They say the issue is affecting schools and putting people's health at risk. Our national correspondent Tom Parmenter's been along to a town hall in Tunbridge Wells to hear what residents had to say.
Put your hand up if you're happy to drink the water that's coming out of the tap. No, nobody. Oh, 1, 2.
They have left us in water limbo.
Very disappointing that South East Water haven't sent a representative here to speak to the community, and that's the least that we could have done.
All they want is a reliable water supply, and are exasperated that their taps keep running dry. South East Water have repeatedly apologised, but they're not here to face you. What do you make of that?
I mean, I'm not surprised they haven't turned up. It's not just a question of investing a bit more in the infrastructure. It needs a complete overhaul. So I do think that if we can perhaps do something here and affect the first change in Kent or in Tunbridge Wells, perhaps the rest of the country can follow suit.
Before that, they want accountability.
I'm David Hinton, I'm the CEO of South East Water.
All they've heard so far this year from the man in charge of their water supply was when he was obliged to give evidence to MPs. He gave his company 8 out of 10 for responding to the incidents and 6 out of 10 for communications. At this school in Tunbridge Wells, it would be 0.
This is what my job is now.
That one's...
I'll just check it's not the tap. Oh, but there is... It's a guessing game, but normally they all work, so...
It's kind of almost screwed us all over a little bit. So I'm quite worried for my exams. I don't want to be on a back foot.
Students need certainty that they can come and sit at these desks. But certainty is something that South East Water seem incapable of delivering.
They're treating us a little bit like idiots, to be honest. You know, they'll throw technical language in our faces and tell us about all the problems that are going on, but we haven't been given a single solution. So this school has had to improvise.
There are COVID vibes around needing to adapt quickly and being resilient.
How much has this cost you so far?
I estimate it to be roughly around £20,000. If South East Water have got the audacity to not provide us that money back, they are literally taking that money from young people.
South East Water has turned down our approaches for an interview, but the calls for transparency, accountability and action are only intensifying. Nowhere more than here. Tom Parmenter, Sky News, Tunbridge Wells.
A £20,000 reward is being offered for anyone who can uncover the person responsible for the gruesome murder in Merseyside 4 decades ago. 21-year-old Dan Sindel was raped and killed in Birkenhead in August 1986, leading to Peter Sullivan wrongly spending 38 years in prison. His conviction was quashed only last year thanks to advances in forensic testing. Our North of England correspondent Katerina Vitozzi has this report.
It's a brutal murder that's haunted these streets for decades. A savage attack on a young woman here in Merseyside by a killer dubbed the Beast of Birkenhead. In 1986, Diane Sindel was just 21. She'd finished working a late shift at this pub, but on her way home, she ran out of petrol. She got out of her vehicle, a blue Fiat. Then she was raped, beaten to death, her body left in an alleyway. For decades, police thought that they had caught her killer. But last year, Peter Sullivan was released after new DNA testing of samples collected here at the scene. It is the longest-running miscarriage of justice in UK history. He'd served 38 years in prison. And now, once again, Merseyside police are on the hunt for Diane Sindel's killer.
Crime Stoppers are offering £20,000 to anyone who can provide information to them in relation to who was responsible for the murder of Diane. Back in 1986, a sample was recovered from Diane at the crime scene. Now, with the advancements working with Cellmark Forensic Services, we've identified a profile of a man from that sample. We didn't have that availability back in 1986. So, as you know, year on year, there are developments in that forensic work. So it's been key to this investigation.
The question is, after so long, is Diane Sindel's killer still alive? And does anyone know anything about what happened that night? Katerina Vitozzi, Sky News, Merseyside.
Now then, Liz Hurley is expected to give evidence at London's High Court today as she and 6 others, including Prince Harry, pursued legal action against the publisher of the Daily Mail. They're accusing it of hiring private investigators to illegally obtain personal information. The publisher denies the claims. Prince Harry claimed the paper made his wife Meghan's life a misery when he appeared in court yesterday. Our royal correspondent Laura Bundock picks up the story.
Prince Harry went into court confidently. He's been preparing for years and was ready for a fight. But he didn't have long. It lasted just 2 hours. His case centres around 14 articles he claims were all written using information illegally obtained through phone hacking and blagging by deception his private details. He denies his friends leaked the stories, telling court the stuff in these articles is not the kind of stuff I would talk about openly. My social circles were not leaky. I want to make that absolutely clear. When asked why he didn't raise concerns earlier, he blamed the famous royal family mantra. I would not have been able to complain about them anyway because of the institution I was in, he said. Never complain, never explain. Only 2 of the articles were examined. This one from 2004 about his relationship with Chelsea Davy. Harry claims it contains information that can only have been obtained unlawfully. But lawyers for the Mail argued Harry's own friends were the source of stories, even quoting his memoir Spare back at him. And this article from 2013 came up about his then-girlfriend Cressida Bonus. Harry again argues the details in it must have been blagged, but Associated Newspapers said the sources were legitimate, including Harry's own office.
You get the sense Harry was frustrated. He didn't have longer in court. A couple of times he was reminded to stick to the script and answer the questions rather than argue his case. His legal challenge against his tabloid tormentors has become a crusade, but it's also clearly come at a cost.
At the end of his appearance, Harry's voice broke. On the verge of tears, he said, "They continue to come after me. They have made my wife's life an absolute misery." Associated newspapers strongly deny any wrongdoing. After he left, Harry said, "Today we reminded the Mail Group who is on trial and why." He's now had his day in court, but his case still has weeks to go. Laura Bundock, Sky News.
We'll, of course, follow all the developments in that case closely. Plenty more on the Sky News website and the Sky News app. I want to take you to Iran now, and it's almost 2 weeks since security forces there opened fire on their own people in protests across the country. Internet shutdowns have meant relatively little is known about exactly what happened, but we are still obtaining new footage and new stories. Our international correspondent John Sparks has been taking a look at one of them, the fate of a 17-year-old boy killed in the crackdown and his family's attempt to retrieve the body. This report does contain images of body bags in a morgue.
A budding performer takes to the mic, fueled by determination and a dream of something big. His name, Abulfazl Yagmouri. A kid from a working-class neighborhood near Tehran, his world is a place where rap is banned. So he pursued it here, a homemade studio built in his closet. Life was hard, the obstacles formidable, but his yearning for change would prove fatal. Abulfazl's family didn't want him to attend the protests on January the 8th, the night the regime opened fire on its own people. Abulfazl's aunt, Gita, said the family began to look for the 17-year-old in the early hours. The boy's brother approached a vehicle that belonged to the morgue. The crew were picking up bodies in the street.
They told him we have 3 kids inside the morgue vehicle. 2 of them, they do have their family. We know the names, but one of them is anonymous with no name. And he opened the body bag and it was the face of his brother. And they find him that night.
Neighbors told the family that they watched the young man die.
They were trying to hit him with anything that they had in their hand, with the boots, with the butt of their gun, with everything, while he was bleeding for 40 minutes. And he was gasping for life, right? And then he passed away.
His body was taken here, a facility south of Tehran, where families gather to identify their loved ones. These images recently uploaded to the internet. What happened when Abulfazl's parents got to the morgue to retrieve the body?
They told him, we cannot release the body to you. You have to sign that this kid was part of our army. It was part of IRGC.
Revolutionary Guards.
Exactly. Otherwise, we are not going to give the body to you.
So Abulfazl's parents were told to sign a document saying their son was serving in the regime's forces when he was killed by protesters.
They didn't agree to sign that, so they asked for money, and then they released the kid.
Is this the so-called bullet tax, the bullet money?
This is what they are talking about, yes.
The allegation here, the family had to pay the authorities for the bullets used to kill their son. That's difficult. A popular rebellion has been crushed by the regime, but the people will never be the same. John Sparks, Sky News.
Still to come on Sky News, we're going to have more on the back-and-forth spat between Ryanair's boss, Michael O'Leary, and Elon Musk.
I'm Cordelia Lynch, Sky's Asia correspondent, based here in Bangkok.
These slums, once gripped by fear and death.
There is far less bloodshed now, but it hasn't gone away.
Who's asking you to kill?
The police will give me the orders, and after I kill the target, I throw the gun away.
We try our best to uncover and unpick a fast-changing and deeply complex region.
These large waterways provided an excellent source of body disposal.
This is the Buriganga River, where victims who'd allegedly been shot dead were dumped.
Sheikh Hasina, how confident are you that she will stand trial?
She will stand trial, there's no doubt about that.
We're going to take you to the very heart of a criminal network, going undercover inside Southeast Asia's scam centres for the very first time.
We won't have any problems with police, it's okay.
Just seen Imran Khan leave, and as we understand it, he's just been shot in the leg.
They have decided that the only way they'll allow elections is if I'm inside jail or killed.
Sky News get the full story first.
Chinese vessels start encircling the boat we're on, blocking its path.
The Chinese are now deploying water cannons, firing it directly towards our boat. We've discovered doctors across Delhi dishing out pills like this, claiming they will provide a lifelong cure for homosexuality.
Rohingya people fleeing an escalating civil war.
The situation here in Cox's is desperate. An already insecure place does feel a lot more precarious.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
The Ryanair boss, Michael O'Leary, says his fallout with the world's richest man has been, quote, great for bookings. It's all over the possibility, or maybe not, of installing Musk's Starlink Wi-Fi on planes, which has descended into Musk calling the airline boss a chimp in a back-and-forth argument. Our Ireland correspondent Stephen Murphy reports.
An utter idiot, aka the boss of Europe's largest airline, spectacularly unbothered by Elon Musk's insults. Michael O'Leary, a consummate PR operator, claims sales have risen in the day since the world's richest man branded him an utter idiot. Insults flew after O'Leary rejected efforts to install Musk's Starlink Wi-Fi on Ryanair aircraft.
Is that kind of rhetoric really insulting to the chimpanzee community? And should anyone take this spat seriously at all?
I think that's a very unfair characterisation. I do think it's unfair on chimps. But, you know, it is very good for our bookings. And, you know, if we can prolong these kind of... We love these PR spats that drive bookings on Ryanair. I'm sure it does wonders for Elon Musk and his X or whatever subscribers he has on X as well to be fighting with somebody.
O'Leary says the Starlink hardware would result in drag and fuel costs, simply unaffordable. We've approached X for comment from its owner. Also unaffordable, any full-scale trade war between the US and the EU. Ryanair buys more US aircraft than anyone outside of America.
I believe the European Union should stand up to Mr. Trump, and if he wants to levy tariffs on Europe or European countries as a result of his demand for Greenland, the Europeans should levy reciprocal tariffs. I don't think you can accede to Mr. Trump demanding Greenland. I don't know how then he would respond if the Chinese demand Taiwan, or if Russia decides it's going to demand Poland or the Baltic states as well.
Elon Musk has floated buying Ryanair, much as he did before he went and bought Twitter, now X. However, EU regulations look likely to block such a move as the insults continue to fly as often as Ryanair's Starlink-less aircraft.
That suits Michael O'Leary, who says Musk can insult him all day, every day, if it continues to boost sales. Stephen Murphy, Sky News in Dublin.
I'm going to stick with news, but we're going to have a musical interlude now because some of the biggest names in music have been recognised with the nominations out for this year's Brit Awards. Young British artists Lola Young and Olivia Dean are leading the way with 5 nominations each.
Just come be the man I need. Tell me you got something to give. I want it. I kinda like it when you call me wonderful.
If you don't know it already, that is Olivia Dean. The 26-year-old from London's become a global star. certainly. Nominated for Artist, Album and Pop Act of the Year, is up for 2 gongs in the Song of the Year category too, including this one. Also, remember these guys? Well, the Sheffield Rockers Pulp might have formed in the 70s, but they've been nominated for their first Brit Award in 30 years. It's not for that song. Instead, they've been nominated for Group of the Year after last year releasing their first album since 1995. More details on that on the Sky News website and app. It's just almost exactly 6:30. Let's look at the weather.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News weather.
Colder over the weekend, the next few days mostly mild and unsettled. There's a Met Office amber warning, in fact, for rain over parts of eastern Scotland. So do go steady and check before you travel. Also, other regions affected too. Up in eastern Scotland, over 100 millimetres possible on some hills. Cloud quite extensive this morning. Widespread showers, longer spells of rain. Central Ireland, though, looking mainly fine. Parts of Scotland can expect the heaviest, most persistent rain, with snow developing over the Highlands. Temperatures around average, with strong winds in the north bringing a risk of coastal gales. Temperatures in high single figures. The afternoon bringing more of the same, but more of Ireland will turn drier and brighter along with the southwest of Britain. Rain moving northwards overnight, becoming largely confined to Scotland later. Mountain snow likely. Some fog will develop before the south, before wind and rain reaches the southwest. Tomorrow, further showers, longer spells of rain, some snow on Scottish mountains.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News weather.
Still to come, we're going to bring you all the action from the world of sport, including Liverpool putting themselves in a good position to automatically qualify for the Champions League knockout stages. They won against Marseille.
I'm Cordelia Lynch, Sky's Asia correspondent, based here in Bangkok.
These slums, once gripped by fear and death.
There is far less bloodshed now, but it hasn't gone away.
Who's asking you to kill?
The police will give me the orders, and after I kill the target, I throw the gun away.
We try our best to uncover and unpick a fast-changing and deeply complex region.
These large waterways provided an excellent source of body disposal.
This is the Buriganga River, where victims who'd allegedly been shot dead were dumped.
Sheikh Hasina, how confident are you that she will stand trial?
She will stand trial, there's no doubt about that.
We're going to take you to the very heart of a criminal network, going undercover inside Southeast Asia's scam centres for the very first time.
We won't have any problems with police, it's okay.
Just seen Imran Khan leave, and as we understand it, he's just been shot in the leg.
They have decided that the only way they'll allow elections is if I'm inside jail or killed.
Sky News get the full story first.
Chinese vessels start encircling the boat we're on, blocking its path.
The Chinese are now deploying water cannons, firing it directly towards our boat. We've discovered doctors across Delhi dishing out pills like this, claiming they will provide a lifelong cure for homosexuality.
Rohingya people fleeing an escalating civil war.
The situation here in Cox's is desperate. An already insecure place does feel a lot more precarious.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Good morning. You're watching Mornings on Sky News. These are the headlines this hour. Donald Trump has dropped the threat of tariffs against Europe after coming to an agreement over Greenland's future. NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte says Greenland's sovereignty wasn't discussed with the president. There's been a sharp rise in the number of adults taking medication for ADHD, especially among women. New research reveals the biggest surge seen in women aged over 25, rates increasing 20-fold between 2010 and 2013. Crime Stoppers announces a £20,000 reward for information which helps discover the killer of 21-year-old Diane Sindel. She was murdered in Birkenhead in 1986, leading to Peter Sullivan being wrongly convicted and spending 38 years in prison. And residents banding together in Tunbridge Wells as frustration grows over persistent water problems in the area. South East Water has put recent issues down to an electrical fault at a treatment works. Now, if you want more of the day's top stories, check out Cheat Sheet. It's the podcast with Sophy and Wilfred. This morning, more on a new police appeal over a cold case killing.
A big, fresh police appeal for information as they try and reinvestigate and search for her killer. You know, so many years later, and they do believe there's a good chance that the killer could still be alive and at large, albeit 38 years on.
Now, you know what I'm going to say. If you want to get more on that, scan the QR code on the screen right now. You can listen to Cheat Sheet in full, or just go to preferred podcast download store. It's all there, ready and waiting. So too is the sport.
There's a reason why I've got a Premiership now.
There was a lot of noise around Alan possibly going to Manchester United and then Newcastle.
If you're asking me would I like Alan Shearer, of course, who wouldn't like Alan Shearer?
Doesn't bother me at all, that's all it is, talk.
There are only two clubs that interested Alan.
I spoke to Sir Alex Ferguson. The temptation to go to Man United was huge.
You name your price, you've got to be prepared to stick to it.
How much I said, because that was a world record.
It's £15 million, making it virtually impossible for me to leave.
I think there was an inevitability that he would move at some stage.
Serious shout for United! How will the lads?
We're breaking records. We're giving people hope again.
Be like 725 for his name and number.
I just had to come back home. It was my dream to play for Newcastle and score goals at the Gallagher.
A lot of people probably looked at us and thought we probably needed a couple of centre-halves. Not Keegan.
After all, I'm only a sheet metal worker's son from Newcastle. If I had to make the same decision again, it would be signed for Newcastle all day long.
Still to come, we're going to discuss all the stories making the headlines in the papers with our panellist, Charlotte Hill.
I'm Cordelia Lynch, Sky's Asia correspondent, based here in Bangkok.
These slums, once gripped by fear and death.
There is far less bloodshed now, but it hasn't gone away.
Who's asking you to kill?
The police will give me the orders, and after I kill the target, I throw the gun away.
We try our best to uncover and unpick a fast-changing and deeply complex region.
These large waterways provided an excellent source of body disposal.
This is the Buriganga River, where victims who'd allegedly been shot dead were dumped.
Sheikh Hasina, how confident are you that she will stand trial?
She will stand trial, there's no doubt about that.
We're going to take you to the very heart of a criminal network, going undercover inside Southeast Asia's scam centres for the very first time.
We won't have any problems with police, it's okay.
Just seen Imran Khan leave, and as we understand it, he's just been shot in the leg.
They have decided that the only way they'll allow elections is if I'm inside jail or killed.
Sky News get the full story first.
Chinese vessels start encircling the boat we're on, blocking its path.
The Chinese are now deploying water cannons, firing it directly towards our boat. We've discovered doctors across Delhi dishing out pills like this, claiming they will provide a lifelong cure for homosexuality.
Rohingya people fleeing an escalating civil war.
The situation here in Cox's is desperate.
An already insecure place does feel a lot more precarious.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Being a Sky News journalist. Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
I hope we haven't forgotten anything.
Travel insurance, I tick that box.
Yeah, but remember what you forgot last year.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News weather.
It will turn colder over the next weekend, and the next few days looking mostly mild and unsettled. There's a Met Office amber warning for impactful rain over parts of eastern Scotland as well. Over 100 millimetres possible on some hills. Weather warnings also for the southwest and Northern Ireland too. Cloud quite extensive this morning. Widespread showers or longer spells of rain, but Central Ireland does look mainly fine. Parts of Scotland can expect the heaviest, most persistent rain, with snow developing over the Highlands. Temperatures high single figures, double digits, around average. Strong winds in the north bringing a risk of coastal gales. The afternoon bringing more of the same. It's going to be more of Ireland, though, turning dry and brighter, along too with the southwest of Britain. Rain moving northwards overnight, largely confined to Scotland. Later, mountain snow likely there. Some fog developing in the south before more wind and rain reaches the southwest. Tomorrow bringing further showers, longer spells of rain, and again some snow on Scottish mountains. Windy in the northeast and southwest. Coastal gales possible, locally severe. Check before you travel.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News weather.
Let's take a look at some of the stories making the headlines in the papers. Pleased to say that we're joined by Charlotte Hill, Chief Executive of the Felix Project, London's largest food redistribution charity as well. Good to have you with us.
Thank you.
Good to see you again. There's lots of pictures of the President.
Aren't there
in the
just?
papers.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Can't escape Mr. Trump.
Yes, and kind of, you know, you could almost be forgiven from the paper's perspectives if all of these stories were slightly out of date, because it has moved so quickly the past couple of days.
It is the roller coaster that is the presidency that we all, whether we like it or not, are going to experience globally. And you've got to think for UK businesses how tough it is when you want a bit of certainty and threatened, you know, whether it's going to be tariffs or not tariffs. And it, as you say, seems to change by the minute.
Yes, and so currently we seem to not have tariffs. That's the current state of play. But we also don't have much details as to how Mark Rutte, the NATO boss, has managed to come to an agreement, although we don't really think that the Danes have been part of this agreement yet either.
Doesn't sound like it, but it does feel like we're getting somewhere. As I've understood it from, as you say, what we're seeing most recently, there's a deal that seems to imply no tariffs. However, I'm not sure the Danes have had a huge amount involved in the NATO conversations. But it does feel like potentially no tariffs, potentially we've got a little bit of stability. We'll have to see how Denmark feel about it, and the fact that actually, I think he called it Iceland for most of the discussions rather than Greenland, which doesn't inspire a huge amount of confidence.
And I was talking to somebody who was in the conference hall, and they said it was like absolute chaos trying to get in. The person I was talking to was about 3 seats away from the president. They'd had to hustle and hustle hard to get a spot. But it was like an entire kind of plane loads of people just trying to get in, heads of state. Some of them didn't manage to make it into the hall. Some people couldn't leave, some people couldn't get in, some people couldn't enter. And then you kind of looked at the arrival. The president, I think there were 7 helicopters landed in this kind of cavalcade of power that then descended on Davos, which isn't short of power at the best of times.
I think, first of all, chaos is not what we need ever, and this feels like chaos. I also think you have to think about what kind of leadership we want to see across the world, and is this strong negotiating or is it bullying? And how do we want leadership to be right across the world? He will say he's got what he needs for national security. let's see how the Danes feel.
Indeed, and also the Greenlandic population as well, because, you know, they are at the heart of this story. I just want to take a look at pages 4 and 5 of the Times, in part because of the imagery that the UK papers are using. I don't know if you noticed this, but there was quite a lot of pictures of the president in lots of the papers that maybe have a slightly kind of critical tone. One's like this, where he's kind of there, open-mouthed, expressive, which is his kind of MO, I guess. But I slightly got a sense from the papers in the UK that they were a little derisatory, maybe, of the president in the way that they had chosen those screenshots to use. Their picture editors might disagree with me, but that was just the sense I got through flicking through.
It is. I mean, there are a lot of pictures of him with his mouth open, shouting or appearing forceful. But again, maybe it's a fair reflection of how he presented himself in the hall. You know, that strong, powerful force that, with 7 helicopters flying in, is how he's wanting to present himself, that, you know, they are the dominant force in the world. And
that's one of the images on the paper. That's some of the images we're just showing our viewers now of those helicopters arriving. There was also a note in the Times that the escalator worked at Davos. When he gave his speech at the UN General Assembly, the elevator didn't work and he was forced to walk up it with Melania, and he opened his speech at the UN General Assembly decrying the building, decrying the elevator, decrying the autocue. He was very critical of the autocue. It turned out the autocue was his own operation that had failed. But, you know, I think it points to the fact that is such of the kind of variability of the president that, you know, we all get peeved if something doesn't quite work at times. But
we do, but if you're doing a job in charge of people, leading people, whatever, what people need is consistency and certainty, not worrying that someone's going to go on stage and blow up because the autocue didn't work. So, yes, we have another 3 years ahead of this, so I think we better get used to it.
We're going to get used to it. We're going to follow it closely. We're going to see what the day brings as well. It's only, well, I guess the president's in Switzerland currently, so I'm sure he's wide awake and busy working. We'll probably get more details, hopefully. Let's see page 4 of the Daily Express.
Yes, this one is around UK kids' health, a national scandal. I think this just points out things that actually I see in my day job all the time, where we are growing up with a nation now where not only are children not getting nutritious food that they need, and we try and rescue as much healthy fresh fruit and veg and get it onto children's plates as we can, because the poorest in society are just not eating the fruit and veg they need. But actually alongside that, children not being able to brush their teeth, you know, one of the highest rates of why children are hospitalised is because of tooth decay. Young children having to have their teeth removed or dental surgery. And we run something called the Felix Multi-Bank with Gordon Brown, which is trying to get toothbrushes and toothpaste into families. And you think, goodness, here we are in 2025, 2026, and actually people can't afford toothbrushes and toothpaste, let alone food on the table. So this report pulls out the fact that this is a growing challenge right across UK society. We have a generation growing up really struggling with their health.
And this is what the report says. So this is the Health and Social Care Committee, as cited in the Express, page 4. Entirely preventable diseases is a national scandal, these MPs say. Children have some of the worst health outcomes in Europe. Britain should be ashamed, according to their report, highlighting, to your point, issues with dentistry, obesity, asthma, mental health, and a 43% crash in health visitor numbers since 2015 and falling vaccination take-ups too, pointing to a rise in measles, for example.
A huge problem for so many reasons. The cost of living in continuing to increase means people having to make really, really tough choices. Imagine being a parent and having to choose between whether you can afford clothes or you can afford a toothbrush or you can afford food. And lots of these different decisions will lead to health outcomes for children. So we really have to do something about this. And I think this report is really highlighting this is something that, of course, is a scandal now, but we're building up huge problems for the future if we don't focus on children's health now.
And that is the thing, isn't it? It's the formative years. And it's through no fault of any child, and often through no fault of the parents. They might end up in a situation where life has dealt them a hand that has led them to the situation they find themselves in.
Exactly.
Or health issues that they find themselves in, or whatever. But children who are 4, 5, 6, 7, who are going to school hungry, who then don't have the best educational opportunities, or children who don't have teeth, you know.
Yeah, it feels shocking to many people, but actually it's the reality facing 4 in 10 parents we've surveyed at the Felix Project are having to make that choice between food, hygiene products, all of these different things. It is genuinely now hard-working families who might be doing 1, 2 or 3 jobs, and are, no matter what, once they've put fuel in the car, once they've paid their increased rent or mortgage, once they've paid those increased energy costs, they simply do not have enough money for those essential household items every week.
We used to talk a lot as a society about food banks. I
Yes.
don't feel as though we talk about it as much anymore. Is that because they've become normalised? Is that because usage has changed? Is that because, as a society, we've got immune to talking about it?
I hope that people are still talking about the fact that it's an absolute scandal. We should not be needing food banks in this country. We at the Felix Project work really closely with our partners, Trussell, who run the food bank network, to say, well, we want to end the need for the use of food banks. We want to be rescuing surplus food and giving it to homeless shelters or domestic violence refugees or places where actually they're paying for their food otherwise and they can be having massive social impact, not crisis support for people who simply, you know, even if they've been to work, they might be key workers in our schools or hospitals, simply now can't afford to put food on the table. So there's something very wrong in society if it's become normalised that people are going to food banks.
I remember reading the story of a farming family that were going to a food bank. You just, the kind of the shocking irony that people that produce food can't then afford to buy it back.
Yeah, I was actually speaking to an NHS worker, a manager in the NHS actually, this week, who thought she was having one baby and she had triplets, which meant that she couldn't go back to work. She had one child with health challenges or whatever, and she went from a person who never thought they'd be living in food insecurity to suddenly finding herself having to go to a food bank to get support because of a life event that could happen to any of us. We all are only a few steps away, and we all have to think that. It isn't just happening to people over there. Actually, so many people are living in food insecurity now as costs have gone up.
And it's easy to go, well, inflation's down to 3.3%, but it's not reversed the 11% that we saw previously. The impacts haven't gone away, and all they've done is baked into the system, I guess.
Exactly, and particularly this time of year, if people have built up a bit of debt around Christmas, they're having to put the heating on and it's cold in January, it's a really tough time of year for people.
Let's just move on to page 10 of the Eye. This is just, I think, a point I kind of wanted to make of the fact that we have a lot of news in the world at the moment. Started the year with Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro. We've started the year with Iran, with Greenland. But there's also an awful lot of these stories that haven't gone away. The situation in Sudan still continues. The situation in Gaza still continues. The situation, as page 10 of the Eye points out, in Kiev, in Ukraine, still continues. And it's so easy when the news cycle just charges on in the way that it does, because we're looking for the new in the news, that you then go, good heavens, you know, as the paper here points out, 4,000 buildings in Kiev without heating yesterday, 60% of the capital without power, temperatures -20, and people are still dying on the front line as well, in their thousands.
Very similar to your point around people not talking about food banks so much, right? The story and the news may have moved on, the challenges people are facing have not, and you're exactly right in Ukraine. Goodness me, for years, people have been struggling and the news cycle moves on. And I can really understand why people watching or reading the papers feel completely overwhelmed by what's happening across the world. It's hard to keep up what's happening because there's so many challenges happening in so many countries. But we must not forget the fact that, you know, we and the US and others have made commitments to Ukraine, and those cannot be withdrawn. We have to stand by them because imagine -20 and not having your heating.
I remember I was on air for the first 3 hours of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and I was talking to a reporter who was in the country, and he's describing the scene in front of him. He's like, a Lada's just pulled up, Lada car. 3 guys have got out. One works as a car mechanic, and 2 others seemingly have some connection to the military. They've got some kind of rusty AKs and a box full of grenades, and they're just looking down the street wondering what's coming. And we're now approaching the 4th anniversary of the full-scale invasion. Well, the invasion of Crimea was 2014. And these stories have just been going for so long, and, you know, there is so much diplomacy that goes on around it. But at the same time, I do just wonder, kind of as a society, whether we kind of slightly get forgetful at times.
I think we do, and I think we have to remember, but I also think we have to try and kind of not feel overwhelmed by all of this, what can feel like incredibly challenging news. I think a lot of the kind of mental health challenges around the world are people feeling like, goodness me, everything feels quite broken at the moment. So whilst we must not forget, we must also somehow focus on some of the positives happening in the world as well.
And actually, this isn't a positive story, but that's why a lot of people have said to me they connected with the Beckham allegations and story and Instagram posts because it wasn't complex geopolitics. It was a bit of family life that people could kind of understand and resonate with, and was maybe it's a very heavy story in some respects, but also a slightly lighter one in others.
Well, and relatable, exactly that, which is, most people have got some sort of dispute in their family or said something that they then regret sharing publicly, they wish they hadn't, all of those sorts of things. So you're right, I think it's a relatable story about a family rather than, goodness me, the roller coaster of international politics.
Well, let's get off that roller coaster. Let's talk about Bake Off.
Yes, exactly right. I really enjoyed, first of all, hats off to Prue Leith, who's 86.
You won't find me working at 86.
Well, do you know what I was thinking? God, I blooming hope I kind of hope I am, actually.
Yeah,
but
fair.
I also think we live in a society where women, as they get older, sometimes are kind of marginalised or put to one side or whatever. She's hanging up a wooden spoon or whatever you call it on Bake Off at 86, which is pretty remarkable. We've got, and I also quite enjoyed the fact that The Sun every other paper has got a big old picture of Donald Trump right across its front page, and the full blasting Nigella front page of The Sun, all about the fact she's going to be the new judge on Bake Off. This really made me think, actually, in my day job, we've opened something called Felix Bakes, which is all about using as much of the surplus produce as we can and baking it. So my challenge to the nation and also to Bake Off is 1.5 million bananas a day are thrown away in this country alone. If you think those were grown in Brazil, flown all the way over here, all the embedded carbon on all of those, and then they're thrown away. At Felix Bakes, we bake those carrots, those bananas, all those things. You can do so much with surplus food. Come on, Bake Off. Let's see what we can do with surplus.
And I'm going to hold my hands up and say I know I threw away about 3 2 days ago. So I'm part of that problem. I also just want to say, if the commissioners are watching, I will be prepared to work at 86 if I just have to eat cakes for a living. I think it's important. It's important to... this is a record of note, this programme at times.
Exactly.
It's important to note that.
Get your rider in right now.
And I will take my bananas, my wasted food, and reuse it as well.
You're a good man.
And that is, and we've only got 15 seconds, but that is the kind of the opportunity that programmes like that have to inspire people.
Absolutely right. We can all do our bit.
Really good to have you with us.
Thank you
so much for tuning in. Thank you for tuning in as well. Plenty more of the day's stories, plenty more of the headlines to come. Sophy and Wilfred got all the details. They've also got cheat sheet. You can find it online. Stick with us.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you.
So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think? It's really unusual.
Mornings with Rich and Frost.
Let's crack on. Let's get started.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
Good morning, it is 7 o'clock and welcome to Mornings with Richard Frost.
With Sophy and Wilf, a very good morning from me as well. Let's get to it.
President Trump calls off his tariff threat on Europe, claiming to have hashed out a NATO deal on Greenland.
The world wants to know how you did the deal, sir.
It'll be explained, but it's a really good deal for everybody.
More British adults are taking ADHD medication than ever before, with the biggest spike among women.
Police hope new DNA evidence could help catch the murderer of Diane Sindel in a case that saw one man wrongly imprisoned for 4 decades.
Plenty more coming from Davos this morning, including Germany's Chancellor, and more from President Trump. We'll speak to the Foreign Secretary in just a couple of minutes.
Residents rage against South-East water in Tunbridge Wells after repeated issues, but still no word from £400,000 a year boss David Hinton.
A very good morning to you. Donald Trump has spared European countries from tariffs for now after agreeing to a framework for a future for Greenland.
So the US president said he's come to an agreement with the NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte over the island's future. It's not exactly clear, though, where Denmark stands in all of this. Our correspondent Paul Kelso is in Davos. He's got the latest.
Mr. President, how did you do the deal? Come and tell us how you did the deal, sir.
It's a good deal, fair deal for everybody. I think it's a very good deal.
Are the tariffs off the table completely now, sir? Can the people of the UK rest assured the deal's gone?
Based on the fact that it looks like we have the concept of a deal.
Donald Trump came to Davos threatening to claim Greenland by any means necessary. 7 hours after he arrived, he claimed to have struck a deal over the future of the territory, taking tariffs and military action off the table.
It's a long-term deal. It's the ultimate long-term deal. And I think it puts everybody in a really good position, especially as it pertains to security and minerals and everything else.
After a false start in Washington, the president descended into Davos late, heightening anticipation for a speech that had European allies hanging on every word. He began with a familiar takedown of the continent and its economies.
Friends come back from different places. I don't want to insult anybody and say I don't recognize it. And that's not in a positive way, in a very negative way. And I love Europe, and I want to see Europe go good, but it's not heading in the right direction.
And on Greenland, he restated his claim, but removed the threat of military action.
I'm seeking immediate negotiations to once again discuss the acquisition of Greenland by the United States, just as we have acquired many other territories throughout our history, as many of the European nations have. We probably won't get anything unless I decide to use excessive strength and force where we would be, frankly, unstoppable. But I won't do that. They have a choice. You can say yes, and we will be very appreciative, or you can say no, and we will remember.
There was criticism, too, of the UK and its energy policy. The president telling Sky News they were simply home truths.
Very disrespectful of Europe and the UK, sir. Why?
No, I'm not, but they have to change their ways.
His foremost American critic may have seen the climb down coming.
You think you saw him back off?
You're going to continue to have to do, he removed the one card that we knew was never real in the first place.
Europeans, meanwhile, were hoping for dialogue rather than another lecture.
What is your message to him?
My message to him is it's time to calm down and find a way forward to work on natural resources together.
Even Trump's energy secretary may have been surprised by the speed of the deal.
The key thing for the president, this is very long term. He's trying to get to the right place that's a win for America and win for our allies abroad. I don't know the time frame. The right result is the most important thing.
Why the change of heart on tariffs, Mr. Lutton?
The truth.
Can you explain why you've climbed down?
And wait until the president got here. You want to all jump the gun.
Once it came, senior administration officials were jubilant. A day really is a long time in Davos.
Well, Yalda's there in Davos for us as well. And Yalda, I wanted to pick up firstly on the way that this deal, in inverted commas, kind of unfolded yesterday. I think Paul used that word jubilant at the end. I guess it's too early to know exactly the details of the deal, but certainly the mood amongst all of those European leaders that you're there with must be certainly less kind of strained than it was just 24 hours ago.
Yeah, good morning, Wilf, Sophie. Yeah, exactly that question. What is the actual deal? No one quite knows as yet. And European leaders I've spoken to since that announcement and that U-turn that we heard late last night from President Trump are still saying, well, we're waiting for exactly what the details are. What was clear was that this was a U-turn. It was a climb down from President Trump. Before he arrived in Davos, he doubled down and he said he's going to do whatever is needed to acquire Greenland, that was something that was part of his ambition and only the United States could secure Greenland. He said that in his speech as well, but the headline that came out of the speech that he made yesterday was that he wasn't going to use excessive force. So that was something that already the Europeans were taking a sigh of relief, knowing that the major NATO member wasn't going to threaten or attack other NATO members. So that was something that they felt quite relieved about. But the fact that then there was this talk of a deal, and Donald Trump, you heard there in Paul's piece, saying that it was going to be a beautiful deal that was going to be long-term. Exactly what the details of that deal was is unclear. What it could have been, though, was Mark Rutte and Donald Trump trying to find some kind of way out from this, because perhaps President Trump was quite surprised that the Europeans had also doubled down and there was such a strong backlash from them. This is an incredibly emotional situation for Europeans. When I spoke to some of the diplomats yesterday here in Davos, they said to me that they felt stabbed in the back by the United States, because when 2001, when 9/11 happened and the United States invoked Article 5, an attack on one is an attack on all, they came and stepped up, supported the United States. There were soldiers that returned in body bags and coffins. And now they were finding the United States lecturing them on this and also threatening them.
And Yalda, we're hearing as well there is going to be a US team heading over to Moscow, where they're going to obviously been trying to beef up these talks on a potential peace deal for Ukraine. What is Donald Trump's movements today on that?
Yeah, Sophie, we've heard Donald Trump talk about resolving 8.5 or so conflicts, and he finds this particular conflict between Russia and Ukraine the toughest. It's still unclear if the Ukrainian president is coming here, although there are reports that he is on his way. He will be meeting with President Trump, but there isn't any clarity. Even President Trump yesterday in his speech said, I'm supposed to be meeting with Volodymyr Zelensky. He may be here in the audience somewhere, and talked about the depth of hatred between Volodymyr Zelensky and Vladimir Putin, and how he's found it quite difficult to bring those two to the table. But of course, earlier this week, Ukraine was meant to be the center of the conversations in Davos. A package was supposed to be signed here, which we're not sure if it's still going to be. The United States didn't send a representative to discuss that deal with the Europeans. It's valued at about $800 billion. So, you know, all of these things are hanging. The conflict in Ukraine, the conversation that he's meant to be having with Volodymyr Zelensky, because we saw this epic distraction with Greenland. So we'll have to wait and see whether there is going to be some kind of security agreement signed here, or those aid packages going to be signed here in Davos, because the time has been spent on Greenland rather than focusing on Ukraine, which Mark Rutte, the Secretary General of NATO, this morning has continued to reiterate that NATO remains committed to.
Yeah, there's a breakfast, we're just showing it in a split screen at the moment, a panel discussing Ukraine, and Steve Witkoff has just said on that there's a lot of progress being made. We're in the end stage now, and there's one issue remaining. We've heard rhetoric, I guess, of that ilk in the past, but we'll continue to see that. I know you'll cover all the details for us later. Final quick question whilst we've got you, Yalda. Was there meant to be lots of progress this week on the Gaza border peace, and has there been?
Well, President Trump is supposed to leave around lunchtime today, and one of the things he's going to do before he leaves is have a sort of roundtable discussion about the Board of Peace, which again, many people are worried about, confused about. Already about 35 nations have signed up to it, but Europeans have either asked for more details, or the French, for example, have declined to join the Board of Peace. There's confusion about what exactly the motivation of this Board of Peace is, exactly. You'll remember at the General Assembly last year, just after when President Trump talked about this potential Board of Peace, the Security Council rather, unanimously voted in support of it. Russia and China abstained at the time, but the idea was that it was a proposal to rebuild Gaza. It now appears that Donald Trump is trying to put this board together because he's saying it will look at conflicts and issues beyond Gaza, and that has raised alarm bells, especially for the United Nations, which is sitting up and saying, well, hang on a second, that is our role. And Donald Trump has said the United Nations is great, but it has essentially been ineffective. And this Board of Peace will look at all sorts of issues. So there are big questions being asked about the nature of this board. Vladimir Putin, for example, and other autocrats have been asked to join the board. There's a fee, allegedly a $1 billion fee. And Donald Trump has said, for those who are signing up, they should pay it now, so they don't have to pay it later in 3 years' time or so. So some kind of membership fee as well. Big questions being asked about what exactly this board is. Will it replace the United Nations, or is there an attempt to? And what exactly are the questions around the money?
Yeah, fantastic to have you with us this morning. Thank you very much, and looking forward to more of the coverage from Davos throughout the day. Lots more still to come, even after President Trump's speech yesterday. It's so interesting talking about a bit of the sort of UK perspective on this. I think the key point when we started the week was, will the tariffs that have been threatened late last week come into effect on the 1st of February? They're now off the table. Similarly, very clearly yesterday, President Trump took military action with Greenland off the table. So we still don't know what's in this deal, far from it, and how far it goes, whether it will hold or not. But those two big factors are what I think in the short term, at least, the UK would have cared about, and they've gone in the direction that Keir Starmer would have liked to see them.
Yeah, we'll try and get a bit more on this with the Foreign Secretary, try and find out if she's got a clue about what is in this deal, as you said, as well. Just to dwell as well on the breaking news that we have had coming out of Davos. This is this breakfast meeting on Ukraine, because it is worth just taking a pause. It just came to us just as Yalda was speaking there. And this is the US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, who has said that firstly he's going to Moscow to try and talk to representatives there to try and get this deal over the line. He said as well that he's feeling pretty positive. We are going to get it done, in his words. He says that we've only got it down to one issue now. I guess the big question is, what is that one issue? Is it something that's easy to fix or not?
Yeah, again, positive mood music off that this morning. But as Yalda was framing, you might look at the whole last few days as a whole and think that we haven't made as much progress on Ukraine, or it hasn't at least been the focal point as much as everyone would have hoped it to have been. Of course, the other key point being that the Greenland discussions and the extent to which the US is listening to Europe or not. And I think that's really the other key question with President Trump, as he caved because Europe and Canada took a very tough stance and he couldn't get them to change their mind, or was this always his plan and being conciliatory therefore was the right way to go?
Well, quite exactly, Wilf. Let's talk now, shall we, and try and get a few more answers, because there are an awful lot of questions still around this morning. We can talk to the Foreign Secretary, Yvette Cooper, who joins us now from Davos. Thank you so much for being with us. So Donald Trump says, in his words, he's agreed the framework of a future deal with respect to Greenland and the entire Arctic region. Do you know what is in this framework?
Well, we've had 2 weeks of very robust diplomacy. We've been unwavering in our principles and calm and very coordinated with our allies and pursuing UK's national interests. So I hope this means we are now in a much better place to actually focus on what the real issues should be, which is our collective Arctic security, how NATO countries work together, respecting sovereignty, respecting our collective security in the face of shared threats, particularly from Russia. So what I hope this now means is there will be a lot of work through NATO on those collective security threats and also the direct discussions that Denmark had asked for Denmark, Greenland and the United States on the way forward around Greenland, protecting Greenland's sovereignty.
Because the question obviously was, do you know what is in the deal? It doesn't sound to me like from that answer like you do. And Donald Trump says everybody's very happy with the deal. I mean, how can we be happy with it if we don't know what's in it?
Well, I think there are two things now that I would expect to happen. The first is a return to some of the discussions that Denmark and Greenland had asked for with the United States, where they had begun those discussions in Washington last week, and that's what they want to focus on, is some very practical discussions about Greenland's security, whilst being very, very clear that Greenland's sovereignty is not up for negotiation. What I've been calling for is a wider programme of work, which I think...
Sorry, just come in. Do we know what is in the deal?
Sorry, Sophie, yeah, go on.
Do we know what is in the deal?
I think this is about... No, I think this is about both two things. First of all, some direct discussions between the US and Denmark, but secondly, and Greenland as well, and secondly, about something that I've been calling for, that the UK has been calling for, which is a sort of Arctic sentry, which is very similar to the approach that NATO has taken to the Baltic sentry, to the Eastern sentry, where countries work together through NATO, a kind of collective framework to security. And that's what I hope we now can focus on, and that's what I hope a lot of the NATO discussions have been about.
The Telegraph are reporting that in this kind of agreement, this framework, the United States would control parts of Greenland by designating them as sovereign base areas under the terms of this kind of proposed deal, a bit like how the UK has with Cyprus, I guess. Is that something that you would find acceptable?
So I think we should just be very clear about this. The principles that we have been talking about are about the sovereignty of Greenland and Denmark. That means the future of Greenland is a matter for Greenland and for Denmark alone. So they want to be able to have constructive discussions with the US about practical security arrangements. There is already a 1951 treaty between the Kingdom of Denmark and the United States around security in Greenland. So they want to be able to have those very practical discussions, but this really is a matter for them. It's a matter for the Greenlanders, it's a matter for Denmark, and it's a matter for them working with the United States.
Can I be honest, because I'm not really clear what you're saying in response to these questions, whether or not you know what's in the agreement and whether or not, you know, this is something that's on the table, whether it's something that would be acceptable to you.
So my understanding, Sophie, is that what we have here is a process going forward. There's going to be a lot of further work going forward, both through NATO as part of some of the things we have called for on Arctic sentry, and also directly discussions between the US and Greenland and Denmark themselves. So that is my understanding of what is now going to happen.
Are we going to be part of those? Sorry,
this is those same principles.
Are we going to be part of those discussions? Are you going to have a seat at the table as Foreign Secretary?
So when it comes to NATO and the work across NATO, then I do expect the UK to be involved in the approach for NATO, because the UK is already heavily involved in the Arctic. It's why I visited the north of Norway last week, and it's why the UK is currently doubling the number of Marines in the north of Norway over a period of 3 years, because we know that the Arctic security affects all of our security. The Arctic is the gateway for the Russian Northern Fleet to be able to move down to threaten the United Kingdom, to threaten Europe, to threaten the United States, and to threaten Canada. And that's why this really is about our collective security, and it's why we've been arguing for a stronger approach across NATO. So yes, the UK would strongly expect to be part of that NATO programme.
One thing that's pretty clear in this whole kind of roller coaster on Greenland, if I can put it that way, is that the European mission to Greenland went down pretty badly in the US, right? You know, we only sent one person, but we know that Keir Starmer had to explain to Donald Trump on Sunday about the motivation behind that. Donald Trump said he may have been misinformed about the motivation for deploying European troops to Greenland. I guess, you know, my question is, isn't that your job as Foreign Secretary to, you know, make sure the US know what we're doing? It shouldn't be up to Keir Starmer to have to, you know, get on the phone to Donald Trump and to clarify things. Does that feed into concerns that, I guess, you know, you're not really that well connected with Washington?
Well, I think it's a reflection of the strength of our connections in Washington, that we've obviously had a very significant shift in the president's position over the last 2 weeks. The fact that we've been doing very determined diplomacy, not just directly the Prime Minister talking to the president, but also talking at every level. I've spoken to Secretary of State Rubio. We have also spoken to many people across not just the US administration, but also Congress as well. And we have done so with our allies. We've done that in a very calm and coordinated way, but also a very determined way, and one that has also been very clear about sticking by our principles, defending the sovereignty for Greenland and for Denmark, and also being very practical about what is in the UK's national interest. I think that is the right approach to take. We've taken that throughout.
There's been, I guess, two ways of kind of looking at this, because, as you say, we have got to a position now with Donald Trump where I think everyone can breathe a slight sigh of relief. You could argue that, you know, the Keir Starmer approach has been right, you know, keeping Donald Trump on side, keeping those communication lines open, not always taking everything that he says literally. Or you could say that actually this is thanks to the people who have been really, really tough. You know, people like Mike Carney, for example, who really stood against Donald Trump, and as a result, he's had to back down. What would you say?
I think there has been a coordinated approach across allies. You heard Keir Starmer yesterday in Parliament making extremely clear not just our unwavering support for the principle of sovereignty, but also making clear that we wouldn't yield to US pressure on other issues, that this was extremely important. These principles were important. We would continue to defend them. And I think it's been us being very clear to US colleagues across the board, our determination that we are not going to move on those principles, alongside us putting forward very practical arguments about how damaging all of this has been, and the need for us now to focus on the collective security threats. The fact that it's been the UK pushing forward more practical approaches to Arctic security more widely, a constructive approach where we have shared threats we need to focus on. And that is what I think all of us need to focus on now, because some of those biggest shared threats is about the threat from Russia to Ukraine, as well as the threat from Russia through the Arctic. That's what we should now be focusing on. I hope we can keep that focus on what is happening in Ukraine, where temperatures are considerably lower than they are here in Davos, and we have a lot of people who are suffering without energy and without power as a result of Russian aggression. That's what we should be focusing on, as well as pulling together across the NATO alliance.
I'm very keen to ask, finally, on Ukraine as well. There's been a kind of breakfast ongoing. The US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff has been talking about the fact he's going to be going over to Moscow. And he says that there's only one issue outstanding on a peace deal for Ukraine. How optimistic are you that there could be some kind of agreement? And I guess the most important thing, that it would be acceptable to the people of Ukraine?
Well, I think this partly goes back to some of the sovereignty principles again, that this is obviously a matter for Ukraine, but Ukraine has been doing some phenomenal work with the United States, looking at issues backed by Europe as well, on things like having security guarantees for Ukraine so that they can move to a peace process. I would say the big test in my mind is Putin serious about peace? Because I haven't yet seen any signs that he is. That is what we need to see. I still think we're going to need more pressure on Russia to bring them to the table, but I really, really hope that actually, in fact, we will see some progress. But really, Putin needs to now show he is ready for peace.
Yvette Cooper, Foreign Secretary, thank you very much for being on the programme this morning.
Thank you, Sophie.
Lots more coverage from Davos, of course, to come throughout the programme, and we'll actually be talking to Palantir from there, and also analysing what we do and don't know about those deals later on. Now, the number of people using medication to treat ADHD tripled in the UK between 2010 and 2023.
Yeah, if you dig into the data, it's interesting because the largest rise was among women. There's more adults getting diagnoses too. We can talk to Sadia about this. Just talk us through the numbers.
So on the face of it, it seems like alarming numbers, a threefold increase. But if you look at the details, some people are saying there is something here to celebrate. Let's talk about that in a bit. But if we go through the study first, it was done by academics at Oxford University. They say more people are using ADHD. In fact, a lot more people. They say we've gone from 0.12% use to 0.39% use in the 13 years between 2010 and 2013, which they say is a threefold increase. ADHD medication is still higher among men, but that gap is closing. They say women in the UK, by the way, they looked at 5 different countries, but they say women in the UK had the highest rate of increase in use, and they also noted an increase of ADHD medication use among children, and that was in both categories that they looked at, ages 3 to 11 and 12 to 17. Now, here's why some people say there is something here to celebrate. They say this reflects an increased awareness of ADHD, particularly in women who often get diagnosed quite late, and that means they then have to play catch up when it comes to treatment. But there's also an important supply and demand issue here, because since September 2023, there's been a global shortage of ADHD medication. So they say that if people are more aware of what the clinical use of it is, then we can prevent shortages in the future. And also, really importantly, they say it helps us to understand which part of the population needs closer monitoring. There is an alarming side note in this study, which is that in the UK and Spain, over 70% of people aged over 25 have previously used antidepressants. And they say that the UK had the highest relative increase out of all the countries that they studied.
Over 70% have used antidepressants?
Of people aged over 25 have previously used antidepressants.
70%?
70.
I mean, that's I have to say, I think that's...
That sounds...
Because the ADHD drugs, obviously, there's been the increase, but we're still talking about a very small number of people relative to the population. Whereas,
exactly.
It's a different story with antidepressants.
And just to say, the government is looking into this, but that is a separate independent review, which is separate to this study.
Certainly, great stuff. Thanks so much. Lots more still to come. We're going to be talking about the need for a digital detox, and one person's just set up a retreat to try and encourage people to do just that. We'll be talking to them next.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live.
They have gone up and up.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway. Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is why it hasn't been stopped.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you.
So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think? It's really unusual.
Mornings with Richard Frost.
Let's crack on. Let's get started. Welcome back. The news this morning. Donald Trump has dropped the threat of tariffs against Europe after coming to an agreement over Greenland's future. He says a solution's been found, a framework deal's been drawn up. What's in it? We're still trying to find out.
Well, there's been a sharp rise in the number of people taking medication for ADHD, mostly due to growing prescription rates among adults and particularly women. New research shows the proportion of people taking ADHD drugs has tripled over the past decade, with the most striking increase among women over 25.
Now, Crime Stoppers is offering a £20,000 reward for new information on the brutal murder of 21-year-old Dan Sindel in Merseyside. It happened 4 decades ago. Peter Sullivan served 38 years in prison for the crime, but was released last year after new forensic testing overturned that conviction.
Now, the House of Lords has backed a ban on under-16s using social media.
Well, earlier this week, the government announced it was consulting to find out if it was a good idea to introduce a ban. So it's a very hot topic, I think, of a conversation. We can talk to Amanda about this. It feels like it's edging closer, I guess.
Absolutely. It's just getting more and more inevitable in a way, isn't it? We've heard more and more government ministers kind of saying that they're very open to the idea. We had this sort of 60 Labour MPs talking about how they would rebel on it potentially over it. The government announcing this week consultation, 3-month period consultations to look at an Australian-style ban, and now the Lords really quite a big move here, essentially, and in a big majority against the government, this kind of cross-party amendment in the Lords has gone through, which effectively says that they think that social media sites should have highly effective checks on age within 12 months, effectively saying you need to bring in a social media ban for under-16s as soon as possible. And the debate in the Lords was very much about, well, if we know there's a big risk to children now, why are we delaying with yet another consultation? We should just be acting now and not waiting for the result of this, suggesting it was kind of a way of kicking the can down the road. And it's something that's been supported by a whole load of celebrities, like Hugh Grant, for example, but also the mother of the murdered teenager, Brianna Gay, as well.
Just talk us through the process from here, because, things take a long time normally going through Parliament for legislation, and all of a sudden we're talking about a vote going through. So this is an existing bill. The Lords, not the Commons, have added an amendment to it. Now the Commons has to specifically vote on that very amendment, so it kind of crystallises the debate much sooner than otherwise would have been the case.
Yeah, so it's this process that's called parliamentary ping-pong, and it kind of goes back and forwards, really. The idea is to kind of improve the legislation as it goes through, but it is quite difficult for the government because we know that a lot of their MPs support the idea of a ban now, and now the Lords have passed this amendment. It means it goes back to the Commons, and they could end up facing a kind of big rebellion on it, and we think the government are still kind of sticking to their guns. They're saying it is complicated, there's a range of views, we need to get it right. They did sort of suggest that they might change the legislation so that effectively at the end of the consultation, if they do think it should go ahead, they won't have to change the law again. It could kind of already have that option in place to kind of speed up the whole thing. But it is quite awkward because we know they've really struggled with parliamentary management.
How are you guys on your phones? Because I'm terrible, I'll be honest. I'm awful.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
Scrolling the whole time, can't get off it.
Sometimes you think, I need to go to bed. Oh, what is the time? You just keep on going. I mean, it's so addictive, isn't it? It's dangerous.
We're talking about it for under-16s.
Actually, bedtime, it doesn't win over. I'm like,
that's
straight away.
Yeah, that's the one good thing.
That's the one part, yeah.
There's a hard
but during
hour.
the day, when you've got downtime, for sure.
You can spend a long time.
This is it. So we're talking an awful lot about kids and social media, but I think if you're anything like us, it's an issue for many of us as well. And we can talk now to the founder of SAMSU, Rosanna Irwin. Now, she's created a retreat for people like us who are struggling to switch off. What's the idea?
Hey guys, thanks for having me. Yeah, I created Samsu because just like you guys, I was pretty addicted to social media. I found I was scrolling for 7-8 hours a day on work and then outside work as well. And so I created a set of off-grid cabins where you come and you lock your phone away when you get there. And there's nothing inside the cabins that has any sort of technology at all. So effectively you do a 48 to 72 hour digital detox.
So even if someone wanted to say, oh, I do want to unplug, but I'm just going to keep it with me just in case, they literally are cut off.
We do give you a Blockia, like an old school 3320 Blockia phone with a number on the back. So yeah, exactly. For emergencies, they can call us and they can also give that number to friends and family. So if anything were to go wrong and if the phone doesn't ring, they know no need to take the phone out of the box because there is that urge, there is that addiction, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
I'm really interested in a word you said at the top there, work, because when it comes to kids, I think the focus for understandable reasons is on social media. But when for me as well, like when we're doom scrolling, it's partly because of work. It's you want to make sure if news is broken, people are wanting to check their emails and stay plugged in. I guess your retreat takes you away entirely from a screen, entirely from a smartphone. I just wonder what your take is on what the core problem here is. Is it social media or is it a bit unfair just to always use that simple label of the problem?
I think there's a societal expectation that we have to be online 24 hours a day and available 24 hours a day. I think one of the biggest pieces of feedback that we get from guests when they stay in the cabin is that they realise that the world didn't fall apart for 3 days when they weren't online. I think we feel that we need to know everything that's happening at all times, but in actual fact, apart from maybe you guys who do actually need to know the breaking news, I think for 99.9% of us, it's okay to miss out for a couple of days.
How does it make you feel? It makes me feel nervous, I'll be honest, the thought of it. I don't know.
There's always news breaking.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the last few days. I guess you could have arrived and the Greenland story was a footnote if you started Thursday and came back today. There was just nothing happened.
If you'd ignored it, you'd be like, yeah, we start off with no tariffs and there's still no tariffs. Maybe it's good for all of us with the kind of...
No details you need to know in between.
Yeah, exactly.
Not quite.
My question is, I saw a very interesting survey yesterday in the newspapers where it was basically saying that the recreational activity we do the most is scroll on our phones, and it's also the thing that brings us the least joy and pleasure. And it said that people were talking about things that bring them pleasure, like playing sport, like reading a book, even watching TV. It's actually much more just kind of pleasurable to people than doom scrolling. What's wrong with us? Why are we spending so long doing something that doesn't even make us happy?
I think there are a lot of very smart people that work at these companies that are paid a lot of money to figure out how to get us addicted to these devices. But I think you're right, the tide is turning. People are starting to realise that it doesn't bring them joy. And I think that's why there's this huge rise in wanting to do analog activities, wanting to come to a cabin and do a digital detox, wanting to break that habit. So yeah, I think things are changing. The changes in laws, the increase in interest in getting away from it all. So I hope that things will change this year and beyond.
All right, Rosanna, thanks so much for joining us. Much appreciated.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Maybe that should be our next team away day.
Well, I mean, I think it's be a good idea, and we'll miss out on the next story, but it doesn't really matter because it always.
Well, Rosanna told it was fine.
Because of TACO, you know, Trump always chickens out. So you come back round, tariffs have gone again. We didn't even need to cover it.
There we go. There we go. One story we should be covering, though, is water, because that isn't changing all the time. Just talked to people in Tunbridge Wells because they are seeing persistent outages in their own water. They've had the first meeting of the newly established Community Fight Back group because they're sick of it all, basically.
Well, Kent and East Sussex have faced disrupted water supplies now for over 3 years, and the people who live there have had enough, as Sophie said. Let's listen to Tom Parmenter's report.
Put your hand up if you're happy to drink the water that's coming out of the tap. No, nobody. Oh, one, it's two.
They have left us in water limbo.
Very disappointing that South East Water haven't sent a representative here to speak to the community, and that's the least that we could have done.
All they want is a reliable water supply, and are exasperated that their taps keep running dry.
South East Water have repeatedly apologised, but they're not here to face you. What do you make of that?
I mean, I'm not surprised they haven't turned up.
it's not just a question of investing a bit more in the infrastructure. It needs a complete overhaul. So I do think that if we can perhaps do something here and affect the first change in Kent or in Tunbridge Wells, perhaps the rest of the country can follow suit.
Before that, they want accountability.
I'm David Hinton, I'm the CEO of South East Water.
All they've heard so far this year from the man in charge of their water supply was when he was obliged to give evidence to MPs. He gave his company 8 out of 10 for responding to the incidents and 6 out of 10 for communications. At this school in Tunbridge Wells, it would be 0.
This is what my job is now.
That one's...
I'll just check it's not the tap. Oh, but there is... It's a guessing game, but normally they all work, so...
It's kind of almost screwed us all over a little bit. So I'm quite worried for my exams. I don't want to be on a back foot.
Students need certainty that they can come and sit at these desks. But certainty is something that South East Water seem incapable of delivering.
They're treating us a little bit like idiots, to be honest. You know, they'll throw technical language in our faces and tell us about all the problems that are going on, but we haven't been given a single solution.
So this school has had to improvise.
There are COVID vibes around needing to adapt quickly and being resilient.
How much has this cost you so far?
I estimate it to be roughly around £20,000. If South East Water have got the audacity to not provide us that money back, they are literally taking that money from young people.
South East Water has turned down our approaches for an interview, but the calls for transparency, accountability and action are only intensifying. Nowhere more than here. Tom Parmenter, Sky News, Tunbridge Wells.
Well, let's talk now to the local MP for Tunbridge Wells, the Liberal Democrat, Mike Martin. Mike, great to have you with us. You've joined us on this topic a few times, which understandably is close to your heart. Tom Parmenter just talking there about how hard it's been to get time with and details from the CEO. Have you had interaction with him?
Yeah, I mean, I have daily interactions with South East Water, various different bits of it, and I am occasionally talking with the CEO. But I think the characterisation that you guys have got is exactly right. They've gone to ground, they refuse media interviews, they try and avoid scrutiny. The company's in a real mess.
Do you think that's acceptable, the visibility of the CEO at this moment?
It's completely unacceptable, and it's not just me and those residents and the Dry Action Group, the story you covered last night. The Minister for Water, the Secretary of State, they think it's unacceptable. The Prime Minister's been repeatedly questioned on it at PMQs. He thinks this behaviour is unacceptable. I was speaking last night with the Chair of the Select Committee, and he will be recalling Dave Hinton and the Chair, Chris Train, to give evidence, more evidence back to the Select Committee, because they are not happy at all with the level of accountability and engagement that we've had so far. And just finally as well, the Select Committee is also minded to call in the investors, the owners of South East Water, because if they're not getting any joy with the CEO or the Chair, the next step is the owners.
Clearly, it's been really bad of late. It was really bad late last year. But as Tom was making clear in that report, there's been clear moments like this in the last 3 years as a whole. Does that add to the scale of how inexcusable it is that we are where we are once again?
So in 2022, we had a week-long 9 days for some houses outage. And after that, Dave Hinton promised, both in public and in private to me, that the resilience would be sorted out, and also the crisis management and the communications, which you picked up on in your report. None of that was dealt with. And then in early December and in January, we've had 25 days across 6 weeks of outages in Tunbridge Wells. And this is why everybody, apart from the government, but every political party, the chair of the Select Committee, everyone else is calling for Dave Hinton to resign, because the leadership is just so appalling and there's a total failure to learn lessons from previous outages.
So that's South East Water, the company. Again, given that there have been so many warning signs, so many examples of this in the past, to what extent does the regulator also have to take responsibility?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think we have had a very weak regulatory regime over previous years, and I'm glad to see that the government is tightening that somewhat. I think now there is one particular thing that the government needs to get a grip of, and that is debt. Across the water industry, we have £70 billion worth of debt. In South East Water, they have £1 billion worth of debt, and that's owned by their shareholders, and they pay rates of interest of up to 10% on that debt. And that is what needs sorting out. That debt needs restructuring. The interest rates need bringing down, because when you're paying 10% on your debt, Thames Water customers, a third of their bills goes on servicing debt. And that means you're not investing in the network. And that is down to Ofwat. And they need to get a grip of that. The government needs to get a grip of Ofwat. Ofwat needs to get a grip of that debt problem.
Well, it does raise the question. I mean, South East Water hasn't had a moment like this in the last couple of years, but Thames Water has, where it's on the brink of bankruptcy. And without even having to legislate, without even having to find money to buy Thames Water back from the private sector, the government could have just allowed that to be the default outcome. Should the government be thinking about this more broadly, kind of like they've done with trains? This isn't a purely private industry to start with. Should it be a public industry?
Well, actually, last year, South East Water did have a wobble, and the investors had to put in another 200 million. So they are teetering on that brink. They're 74%. The debt-to-equity ratio in South East Water is 74%, which is similar to Thames Water. I think the problem is that, unlike with the rail industry, what the government did was allowed the contracts to lapse and then just took the train companies back in for free. That's not possible with the water industry because, for instance, NatWest Pension Fund owns 25% of South East Water. The government won't want to renationalise those companies for a song, because then pensioners in the UK who are receiving their pensions from NatWest Pension Fund will suddenly see their pensions downgraded, and the government will probably end up carrying the can for that. So it's not quite as simple as the way the rail industries were renationalised for a song. Ultimately, what I think should happen is that there should be a debt mutualisation where there's a fund set up that's given a backing by the government, a sovereign guarantee, that gives lower rates of interest, and that mutualises all the £70 billion worth of debt across the water industry and takes it out of the hands of those shareholders, so that we have lower rates of interest, and that means a greater level of investment can be driven into the sector much faster.
Mike, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
We're going to have a quick look at the weather now.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News weather.
It will turn colder over the weekend. The next few days, they look mostly mild and unsettled. There's a Met Office amber warning for impactful rain, which I think means heavy rain over parts of eastern Scotland, with over 100 millimetres possible on some hills. Cloud will be quite extensive this morning as well, with widespread showers and longer spells of rain, but Central Ireland looks mainly fine. Parts of Scotland should expect the heaviest and most persistent rain, though, with some snow developing over the Highlands.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News weather.
Repeat drug driving offences are rising in England and Wales. We're going to speak to the Chief of Red Driver Training about possible solutions to that, but more broadly about a lot of the government's proposed changes to laws around licences, restrictions, and a story we saw yesterday, which is a lot more people apparently are cheating when they take their theory test. All of that to come.
I'm Cordelia Lynch, Sky's Asia correspondent, based here in Bangkok.
These slums, once gripped by fear and death.
There is far less bloodshed now, but it hasn't gone away.
Who's asking you to kill?
The police will give me the orders, and after I kill the target, I throw the gun away.
We try our best to uncover and unpick a fast-changing and deeply complex region.
These large waterways provided an excellent source of body disposal.
This is the Buriganga River, where victims who'd allegedly been shot dead were dumped.
Sheikh Hasina, how confident are you that she will stand trial?
She will stand trial, there's no doubt about that.
we're going to take you to the very heart of a criminal network, going undercover inside Southeast Asia's scam centres for the very first time.
We won't have any problems with police, it's okay.
Just seen Imran Khan leave, and as we understand it, he's just been shot in the leg.
They have decided that the only way they'll allow elections is if I'm inside jail or killed.
Sky News get the full story first.
Chinese vessels start encircling the boat we're on, blocking its path.
The Chinese are now deploying water cannons, firing it directly towards our boat. We've discovered doctors across Delhi dishing out pills like this, claiming they will provide a lifelong cure for homosexuality.
Rohingya people fleeing an escalating civil war.
The situation here in Cox's is desperate. An already insecure place does feel a lot more precarious.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist. A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond. You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
Right, there's been a lot of driving news over the last couple of weeks, including this alarming new statistic that drug driving reoffences in England and Wales has risen by 24% in the last year.
Yeah, so this is figures from the Ministry of Justice, and they revealed there were almost 3,200 incidents which were committed by repeat offenders. So this is not just the total number of people on drugs offences, this is repeat offences, and it's up from 2,500 the previous year. Well, joining us now is the Chief Executive of Red Driver Training, Seb Golden. Great to have you with us. The government's doing all sorts of things, aren't they, to try and make the roads kind of safer? Like, how dangerous do you think the roads are? How much of a concern is it with kind of drug and alcohol offences?
I think in the last, thanks, good morning, by the way. In the last 5 years or so, the stats have actually flatlined in terms of an improvement in road safety, which is reflected in the numbers that you just came up for drug driving and drink driving there. Drug driving in particular, it's only actually been an actual offence for the last 10 years or so. So in terms of the statistics, it's still moderately hard to actually ascertain how much of are things going up or down, and also in terms of enforcement. So got to bear in mind that the police at roadside, they can only actually currently detect for, I believe, cocaine and cannabis. Any other drugs, they just have to take a view on it. So whilst there have been enforcement is improving clearly because there are more convictions, it is a huge worry that you've got repeat offenders here, which would suggest that there's people should be probably getting longer bans or perhaps further education to support them when they do get back on the road, a bit like is available for repeat drunk drivers as well.
I wanted to ask about a different driving talking point that we've spoken of late, and that is the potential prospect of those over 70 having to take eye tests again or even driving tests again. Do you think that is reasonable or unfair?
The system today has, currently you self-certify that your eyesight is okay once you're over the age of 70, and you do that every 3 years. I think the only change here is actually enforcing that you have to have an eye check. And this is off the back of this. There are some very worrying statistics that show particularly the over 80s are involved in actually more fatal and harmful collisions than the under 25s. So it is actually following the statistics. it is also in line with other European countries as well that have a similar protocol. And there's another element in here that there's a cognitive test that older drivers can go through as well, just to ensure that they do actually remain safe on the road. It's a real balance between enabling people to have their freedom. My own parents are almost in their 90s and have just taken the decision to opt to not drive. It's a very tricky balance between enforcement and self-selection here.
Yeah, and Seb, you know we love getting you on the programme. There's always so many different driving issues to talk to you about, and there is another story that really caught my eye. So, driving test cheats up 47%. I mean, what's going on? I guess this can't be the practical test unless they're like slipping, 20 quid to driving instructors. How are people cheating?
So on this story, it is actually the practical test and the theory test. So in the theory test, people are using Bluetooth headsets to be fed the answers. I mean, bear in mind, the theory test, actually, the pass mark, it's easier to pass your maths GCSE than it is theory test.
I remember how hard it was, actually.
You tested me on some of it. I didn't get to turn the tables.
Yeah. How do you cheat on the actual practical test, then?
So that's identity fraud. So that's people trying to make themselves look like the photo of someone's driving license and turning up and taking the test on behalf of someone else. Now, I think...
Yeah, exactly.
Glasses,
This is what Will's up to.
Funny glasses or whatever.
Bit of money on the side.
But what the more worrying part of this is that this is being driven by a huge increase where demand is completely outstripping supply with the availability of both theory and driving tests. So there's currently a 6-month wait in most parts of the country to get a driving test.
We're in danger of crashing to the end of the hour, which just shows how many driving topics we've got to talk to you about, as always. Great to have you. Always good to chat. Thank you, Sam.
Seb Golden there from Red Driver Training. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll have all of the day's top news and we'll back out in Davos.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you? People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
Good morning, it's 8 o'clock. Welcome to Mornings with Ridge and Frost.
With Sophie and Wilf, good morning from me as well. Lots of breaking news overnight to bring you.
President Trump calls off his tariff threats, claiming to have hashed out a deal on Greenland.
The world wants to know how you did the deal, sir.
It'll be explained, but it's a really good deal for everybody.
Meanwhile, Donald Trump's peacemaker-in-chief says talks on Ukraine, a peace deal, are now at the end.
I think we've got it down to one issue, and we have discussed iterations of that issue, and that means it's solvable.
Police hope new DNA evidence will help catch Diane Sindel's murderer in a case that saw one man wrongly imprisoned for 4 decades.
So we've got lots more coming from Davos this morning, of course, including Germany's Chancellor. We'll hear more from President Trump as well, and we'll bring you those speeches when they happen live.
And residents rage against South East Water in Tunbridge Wells after repeated issues, but still no word from a £400,000 salaried boss, Dave Hinton.
Just a little bit of breaking news to start the hour with. We've been talking an awful lot about Greenland, but of course the focus today is slightly shifting to Ukraine with those news on a potential peace deal. And what we can tell you now is that, according to Reuters, President Zelensky of Ukraine is now on his way to Davos. It wasn't clear whether he would be going or not. He is going. He's on our way.
Of course, it comes as there's been more headlines coming about how close a deal is or isn't relating to Ukraine, including some comments from Steve Witkoff, the negotiator, which we'll get to in just a moment. But the headline overnight was, of course, that Donald Trump has spared European countries from tariffs for now, after agreeing to a framework for a future for Greenland.
We're going to try and work out what that framework is, because frankly it's still pretty unclear. But Donald Trump said he came to this agreement with the NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte over the island's future. It's not clear yet where Denmark stands on it all. Our correspondent Paul Calso is in Davos. He's got the latest.
Mr. President, how did you do the deal? Come and tell us how you did the deal, sir.
It's a good deal, fair deal for everybody. I think it's a very good deal.
Are the tariffs off the table completely now, sir? Can the people of the UK rest assured the deal's gone?
Based on the fact that it looks like we have the concept of a deal.
Donald Trump came to Davos threatening to claim Greenland by any means necessary. 7 hours after he arrived, he claimed to have struck a deal over the future of the territory, taking tariffs and military action off the table.
It's a long-term deal. It's the ultimate long-term deal. And I think it puts everybody in a really good position, especially as it pertains to security and minerals and everything else.
After a false start in Washington, the president descended into Davos late, heightening anticipation for a speech that had European allies hanging on every word. He began with a familiar takedown of the continent and its economies.
Friends come back from different places. I don't want to insult anybody and say I don't recognize it. And that's not in a positive way, in a very negative way. And I love Europe, and I want to see Europe go good, but it's not heading in the right direction.
And on Greenland, he restated his claim, but removed the threat of military action.
I'm seeking immediate negotiations to once again discuss the acquisition of Greenland by the United States, just as we have acquired many other territories throughout our history, as many of the European nations have. We probably won't get anything unless I decide to use excessive strength and force where we would be, frankly, unstoppable. But I won't do that. They have a choice. You can say yes, and we will be very appreciative, or you can say no, and we will remember.
There was criticism too of the UK and its energy policy. The president telling Sky News they were simply home truths.
Very disrespectful of Europe and the UK, sir. Why?
No, I'm not, but they have to change their ways.
His foremost American critic may have seen the climb down coming.
You think you saw him back off?
You're going to continue to have to do, he removed the one card that we knew was never real in the first place.
Europeans, meanwhile, were hoping for dialogue rather than another lecture.
What is your message to him?
My message to him is it's time to calm down and find a way forward to work on natural resources together.
Even Trump's energy secretary may have been surprised by the speed of the deal.
The key thing for the president, this is very long term. He's trying to get to the right place that's a win for America and win for our allies abroad. I don't know the time frame. The right result is the most important thing.
Why the change of heart on tariffs, Mr. Lutnick?
The truth.
Can you explain why you've climbed down?
And wait until the president got here. You want to all jump the gun.
Once it came, senior administration officials were jubilant. A day really is a long time in Davos.
Well, the UK, like other European nations, are trying to grapple with where everything has landed at the minute. We spoke to Yvette Cooper, the Foreign Secretary, in the last hour. We asked her a number of times whether she knows what is in this deal that Donald Trump's talking about. Because the question obviously was, do you know what is in the deal? It doesn't sound to me like from that answer like you do. Donald Trump says everybody's very happy with the deal. I mean, how can we be happy with it if we don't know what's in it?
Well, I think there are two things now that I would expect to happen. The first is a return to some of the discussions that Denmark and Greenland had asked for with the United States, where they had begun those discussions in Washington last week, and that's what they want to focus on, is some very practical discussions about Greenland's security, whilst being very, very clear that Greenland's sovereignty is not up for negotiation.
Yvette Cooper earlier on the programme, I guess slightly hinting at the lack of involvement that the UK's had in all of this. Let's bring in our security and defence editor, Deborah Haynes, who's in Kiev. Lots to get to on Ukraine in just a moment. But Deborah, as we all sort of sit here and wonder what could or couldn't be in this deal, I guess one idea that's coming up is whether or not there will be small, very small pockets of sovereignty for the US in Greenland so that they would be able to have more military bases there than they currently have, or at least more protections around those military bases than they currently have. But a lot is still up in the air.
It is, and you can only imagine the very careful, probably fairly frantic diplomacy that's been going on behind the scenes with British and other European officials trying to work out a way to come up with a solution that will sound good when Donald Trump says it, but actually really doesn't change that much in terms of the reality on the ground. The fact is that all NATO allies, the UK, Denmark, people on Greenland as well included, want to ensure the security of that territory. The fact that sovereignty, overall sovereignty, is not really being spoken about really points to the fudge. And there is reports today, aren't there, about the idea that the sort of model that the UK has adopted on Cyprus, where we have sovereign bases like the base in Akrotiri, that is actually sovereign territory. I remember being on the base a few years ago where a boat carrying migrants rocked up on the shore, and it was a big problem not for Cyprus, it was a problem for the UK, because that territory where the UK military has its presence is British territory. So clearly that idea may be appealing to Donald Trump as a bit of an off-ramp, that he can have pockets of military bases that are sovereign US territory, but the overall country and territory of Greenland remains in its status as it is. But of course, that's something that's going to have to be agreed by the Greenlanders and of course, the Kingdom of Denmark. Mark Rutte, the head of NATO, will be hoping that he can manage to navigate a path that changes nothing in reality, but changes everything in the way that Donald Trump portrays how he views Greenland and his ability to ensure the protection of the US with this Golden Dome air defence, including by using that territory.
And Deborah, you're obviously in Kyiv. We've heard from the States this morning saying that they're optimistic when it comes to a peace deal. There's only one outstanding issue left, that they're confident they can get it done. How should we take that? What's your reading of that?
Well, I was talking to a Ukrainian source yesterday who was saying to me that, obviously Ukraine had been hoping that Russia's war here in this country would be absolutely at the centre of everybody's minds in Davos, and they've been feeling rather sidelined over this, this huge row and rift about Greenland. But clearly now that's kind of been, I guess, solved for now, and so the focus will, like you say, shift to Ukraine. Volodymyr Zelensky is on his way to Davos. That was in doubt up until really today, when they've actually confirmed that he's travelling, but at least until yesterday. He's going to be meeting with Donald Trump. The plan had been for this prosperity package, which is a $800 billion package of measures for post-war Ukraine to lock in US and European investment in reconstruction here, and then also a bilateral deal between the US and Ukraine that would include security guarantees that they may be signed. But more than that, of course, is the hope that Donald Trump has of a peace deal. You can hear his envoy, Steve Witkoff, who's en route to Moscow now to speak to Vladimir Putin, give a sense of where he thinks we're at.
We're at the end now, and I actually am optimistic. I spent the evening with David last night, with General Budanov, who's now Vice President Budanov, and Rustem. They've been amazing, by the way. You have, to the Ukrainian people here, you have an amazing negotiating team. We spent a lot of time together. I don't know how much, but it could be 100 hours together since Geneva. It's literally that comprehensive. And I think we've got it down to one issue, and we have discussed iterations of that issue, and that means it's solvable.
I mean, he didn't say what the issue is, but most likely it's about territory, isn't it? The Donbass region that Russia wants to claim as its own, and that Ukraine, understandably, wants to continue having it in its country. And this Ukrainian source I was speaking to was saying to me that, well, yes, the US and the Ukrainians have been really working hard and have come up with an iteration of a deal that they agree on. That is now what's being put to Vladimir Putin. And so what Putin says about the deal will be crucial, and until there is an agreement, doesn't matter how many percentages close you are to that agreement, there is no deal.
Deborah, great stuff. Thanks so much for that. Deborah Haynes there in Kiev. Lots more to come as well on this topic and others. As Deborah said, President Zelensky's travelling to Davos. We'll be monitoring that very closely. We'll be hearing from Friedrich Merz at 8:30 in Davos. We think Nigel Farage as well. I mean, we know he's there, but we might be able to take his comments live as well at 8:30.
Yes, an awful lot coming up to stick with us for.
Yeah, Donald Trump's border peace speech coming up at 9:30, so we'll get that as well. We're going to stick with Davos now, and delighted to say I can bring in Louis Mosley. He's Palantir's Executive Vice President for the UK and Europe. Palantir, of course, one of the leading tech companies in the world at the moment, consultancy in and around AI. Louis, good morning to you. Thanks so much for joining us. Why don't we just pick up on Ukraine, first of all, because you guys have been involved with the Ukrainians, and in particular have announced recently that you're working with them and the UK and US to some extent on analysing the data that they've had from the front line, particularly as it relates to drones.
Yes, thank you for having me. We've been working very closely with the Ukrainians since the outbreak of hostilities there, since Russia's invasion almost 4 years ago. And we announced over the course of this week, I was in Kiev on the weekend, an important development on the technology side with their armed forces, which is actually focused on air defences. And we think, and this gave me actually a lot of hope, it's the first time I've come back from a trip to Ukraine for some time with a renewed sense of hope that they might be developing a technical advantage that will start to give them a path to long-term survival on the battlefield.
So I guess the scale of innovation, despite being, or maybe perhaps because they're in the middle of a war, the technological innovation they're delivering on the front line is incredibly impressive, and in fact probably well ahead of the technology that, for example, our military has at the moment.
Well, I think when you're in a conflict, it's an existential crisis. You have a sense of urgency that doesn't exist in peacetime. And of course, you're dealing with an adversary who adapts. So every time you develop something new on the battlefield, a new bit of technology, your opponent will develop some kind of countermeasure. And that's what we've seen play out over the last 4 years, where you could think of it like a cat and mouse game, where the Ukrainians develop something, the Russians develop a countermeasure, and back and forth. And we're seeing that evolution, those generations of technology, that every 6 to 8 weeks, whatever was on the battlefield becomes obsolete, and it's a new generation of technology.
How do you as a company decide which countries, on particularly the topic of defence, all-important topic of defence, to work with and which not to work with? Who makes that ultimate decision?
Well, we've had a policy since the very inception of Palantir that we exist to help the West win. So we have never worked with countries that we would consider adversarial to the West, Russia, China, and so forth. So we work exclusively for the West and its allies. So that means that when the war broke out in Ukraine, it was very straightforward for us. We were going to be there to support the Ukrainians for as long as it took to keep them in the fight and resist Russian aggression.
And that is the decision ultimately just of your boss?
We are a company, so yes, from a corporate governance point of view, it is ultimately the leadership of the company that decide this, but it is company policy and has been from the very outset. And we work extremely closely with the military and national security establishments of the US, the UK, NATO, and many of the member states and their allies.
Speaking more broadly, and I know obviously you're the head of UK Europe for Palantir and based in London, do a lot of work here. Over the last 2 decades, everyone, all economists have lamented somewhat at the lack of productivity growth in the UK. How much can AI do to change that? Are you optimistic that as a nation we're doing the right things to boost productivity growth, or are you worried that we're not doing enough?
I think AI is the biggest productivity boosting technology that has emerged for potentially hundreds of years. I think it's of a scale of the Industrial Revolution, the impact it's going to have on our economy, on our daily lives. So the opportunity is immense. I think the UK is extremely well placed, actually, to take advantage of this new technology. Much of it is actually developed in the UK. Outside of the US, the only country in the West, broadly defined, that has the talent base that's required to build groundbreaking AI and AI companies is actually the UK. It's no accident that Palantir has 20% of its global headcount in London, or that Google DeepMind, the AI side of Google, is headquartered in the UK. So from a human capital point of view, we're incredibly well positioned. The challenge, of course, is you need the AI infrastructure, the physical infrastructure, to start being built at pace in the UK. I would also actually commend the government. This is an area where the current government has been very forward-leaning. The AI action plan that they published at the beginning of last year was really, I think, exactly what governments should be doing with regards to AI, which is really focusing on how do we increase uptake, how do we increase adoption, because that means we'll realise the benefits more quickly.
Clearly, some of the deals or partnerships that have been announced have divided opinion. Palantir's working with the NHS to try and improve efficiencies there, and the latest politician to come out against that has been Zach Polanski. To what extent can you understand people questioning your partnership with NHS, which has so much private information of so many individuals? And what is your response to those criticisms?
Well, the criticisms are based on a misapprehension about the nature of our technology and our business model. So the NHS controls all of the data that the NHS has. They simply use our software to process it, which means Palantir does not have access to that information. We don't monetize that information. We have no business interest in it. And so fundamentally, that criticism is not founded on any kind of truthful premise. And so that means that I frankly, I find it disappointing. I mean, as a Brit, I want the NHS to work. I want it to help me, my family, my friends. And when politicians take an ideological position against a technology that can help patients, By the way, we have helped over the last year 80,000 people in Britain get hospital appointments, treatments, and actually operations that they would not otherwise have got if the technology were not in place. So Zach Polanski is putting ideology over patients, and I think that's sad.
Louis Mosley, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it. From Davos, the head of UK and Europe for Palantir.
Thank you.
There's been a fresh police appeal for information over a horrific crime that happened in 1986. You might remember it. Diane Sindel, she was killed after she just finished a late shift at a pub. She was working extra hours to save up for her wedding. But the reason this has been put out now, this £20,000 reward, is because there was a miscarriage of justice and the person they thought did it didn't actually do it. Yeah, the murder took place 4 decades ago, and this is, we're talking of course, if we can just scroll back up a little bit, guys, we're talking, of course, about 21-year-old Diane Sindel, who was murdered in Birkenhead in August 1986. Let's listen to Katerina Vitozzi's report.
It's a brutal murder that's haunted these streets for decades. A savage attack on a young woman here in Merseyside by a killer dubbed the Beast of Birkenhead. In 1986, Diane Sindel was just 21. She'd finished working a late shift at this pub, but on her way home, she ran out of petrol. She got out of her vehicle, a blue Fiat. Then she was raped, beaten to death, her body left in an alleyway.
For decades, police thought that they had caught her killer. But last year, Peter Sullivan was released after new DNA testing of samples collected here at the scene. It is the longest-running miscarriage of justice in UK history. He'd served 38 years in prison. And now, once again, Merseyside police are on the hunt for Diane Sindel's killer.
Crime Stoppers are offering £20,000 to anyone who can provide information to them in relation to who was responsible for the murder of Diane. Back in 1986, a sample was recovered from Diane at the crime scene. Now, with the advancements working with Cellmark Forensic Services, we've identified a profile of a man from that sample. We didn't have that availability back in 1986. So, as you know, year on year, there were developments in that forensic work. So it's been key to this investigation.
The question is, after so long, is Diane Sindel's killer still alive? And does anyone know anything about what happened that night? Katerina Vitozzi, Sky News, Merseyside.
It was an appalling miscarriage of justice, someone who spent such a long time in jail. But of course, when we report these things and we talk about the person who's been let out, it also leaves this family reeling, not knowing what on earth happened to 21-year-old Diane back in the 80s. Yeah, absolutely. So a fresh appeal for evidence there. Now, the number of people using medication to treat ADHD tripled in the UK between 2010 and 2023. Sadia's here to tell us more details about what on the surface certainly is a very striking statistic.
It is, but some experts say there is cause to celebrate here, but we'll get onto that in a minute. Let's talk about the study first. It says that more people are using ADHD medication, and it says actually in the UK a lot more people are using it. This was done by academics at Oxford University, and they say that the number of people using it is up, and that is people that were already taking it, but also people who are new to taking ADHD medication. So experts say we've gone from 0.12% of use to 0.39% in the 13 years between 2010 and 2013, which they say is a threefold increase. ADHD medication use is still higher among men, but that gender gap is closing because women in the UK had one of the highest rates of increase in use. And by the way, they looked at 5 different countries in Europe for this, and only in Germany had it started to decline, and in Spain it's sort of plateaued and stabilised. They also noted an increase of ADHD medication use among UK children, and that was in both age categories, 3 to 11 and also 12 to 17. Again, the UK continues to see a climb where other countries it is varied, but that could be for a number of reasons, like the Dutch Youth Act in the Netherlands, which is aimed at reducing mental health medication use in children and adolescents. There's also a stat here, which I should clarify. In the UK and Spain, over 70% of people over the age of 25 who were on ADHD medication had also used antidepressants previously, as well as a whole range of other mental health drugs. I should clarify that because I think in the last hour I might have misled you guys on that. So moving
to be honest, it's
confusing, and there's a lot to read before 7 a.m. in the morning. But here's why some people say this is good news. Experts say it reflects that more people are aware of ADHD, particularly for women who are routinely misdiagnosed or diagnosed late, and then they're having to play catch up when it comes to getting access to treatment. But also researchers point to the fact that since 2023 there's been a global shortage of ADHD drugs across the world, and that means that if with studies like this people can sort of see where there's clinical need, can monitor that better, and also monitor populations where there is ADHD better.
Sadie, great stuff. Thanks so much. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we'll be back out in Davos. We're expecting live speeches from Chancellor Merz of Germany, also possibly from Nigel Farage, who's out there. We'll be right back.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Being a Sky News journalist. Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics. I'm so sorry about what happened to you. So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think? It's really unusual. Mornings with Rich and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
Welcome back. Reminder of the headlines. Donald Trump has dropped the threat of tariffs against Europe after coming to an agreement over Greenland's future. The US president says a solution has been found and that a framework deal is being drawn up.
There's been a sharp rise in the number of people taking medication for ADHD. It's mainly adults, actually, driving the increase we've seen.
Crime Stoppers is offering a £20,000 reward for fresh information on the brutal murder of 21-year-old Diane Sindel in Merseyside 4 decades ago. Peter Sullivan served 38 years in prison for the crime, but was released last year after new forensic testing overturned his conviction.
We've been talking a lot on this programme about water outages, particularly in the southeast, people having no water for weeks, bottles, schools closing down, all that kind of thing. And now we're seeing the fight back in Tunbridge Wells. In particular, they've had the first meeting of their newly established community group after the persistent outages in the area. Kent and East Sussex have faced disrupted water supplies for 3 years now, and people have had enough. Let's listen to Tom Parmenter.
Put your hand up if you're happy to drink the water that's coming out of the tap. No, nobody. Oh, one, two.
They have left us in water limbo.
Very disappointing that South East Water haven't sent a representative here to speak to the community, and that's the least that we could have done.
All they want is a reliable water supply, and are exasperated that their taps keep running dry.
South East Water have repeatedly apologised, but they're not here to face you. What do you make of that?
I mean, I'm not surprised they haven't turned up. It's not just a question of investing a bit more in the infrastructure. It needs a complete overhaul. So I do think that if we can perhaps do something here and affect the first change in Kent or in Tunbridge Wells, perhaps the rest of the country can follow suit.
Before that, they want accountability.
Well, I'm David Hinton, I'm the CEO of South East Water.
All they've heard so far this year from the man in charge of their water supply was when he was obliged to give evidence to MPs. He gave his company 8 out of 10 for responding to the incidents and 6 out of 10 for communications. At this school in Tunbridge Wells, it would be 0.
This is what my job is now.
That one's...
Now just check it's not the tap. Oh, but there is... It's a guessing game, but normally they all work, so...
It's kind of almost screwed us all over a little bit. So I'm quite worried for my exams. I don't want to be on a back foot.
Students need certainty that they can come and sit at these desks, but certainty is something that South East Water seem incapable of delivering.
They're treating us a little bit like idiots, to be honest. You know, they'll throw technical language in our faces and tell us about all the problems that are going on, but we haven't been given a single solution. So this school has had to improvise.
There are COVID vibes around needing to adapt quickly and being resilient.
How much has this cost you so far?
I estimate it to be roughly around £20,000. If South East Water have got the audacity to not provide us that money back, they are literally taking that money from young people.
South East Water has turned down our approaches for an interview, but the calls for transparency, accountability and action are only intensifying. Nowhere more than here. Tom Parmenter, Sky News, Tunbridge Wells.
Priya, continued outages and no real end in sight at the minute for many of these people in the southeast. We are waiting for Friedrich Merz, the Chancellor of Germany, to start talking in Davos. We'll go to that live when it begins. We're also waiting for Nigel Farage, by the way, who's due to appear at some events shortly. A couple of bits of breaking news relating to that. Firstly, that President Zelensky is now in Switzerland, so he's touched down or arrived by train. He's not up in Davos yet, we don't believe, but his spokesperson has said he's there. He's, of course, heading there this afternoon, where he's expected to take further talks. We're also expecting a press conference later this morning, about 9:30, from President Trump relating to his Gaza border peace. Yeah, because there's been a bit of a break on that as well. Yvette Cooper, the foreign minister, saying that the UK is not going to be signing up to the US President's border peace treaty. The reason she gave is because President Putin's on it. That's why she doesn't want to do it. So we'll keep all developments in Davos a close eye on them. We'll go to Merz shortly. But we can hear Nigel Farage has just begun. We can listen to that.
that I certainly felt was coming out from the globalists. So, yeah, no, I found it really interesting and worthwhile.
Well, one consensus view, I mean, you and I talked about this, is sort of, it is quite funny that there's so many honest conversations this week, and it sort of suggests, you know, what were the conversations like before, but we have had a lot of...
Well, I think, you see, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, 10 years ago, we had the Brexit referendum result, we had Trump winning the presidency, and I think everyone thought, well, these are just aberrations. These are short-term... I remember Tony Blair saying these are sort of short-term fits of rage, normal service will be resumed. And now everyone realises that actually these were the first tremors of a very, very major change in political conversation and debate. And that, I think, now is writ large.
Well, I want to get into... I think a lot of people are interested in how you're seeing kind of foreign policy, the UK's role in this new world that we've all been talking about this week. But just to get into sort of core Bloomberg territory for a few minutes, one of the consensus views out there, if you ask economists, many people in the city, what would happen to UK borrowing rates if a reform government took power, they go up. At least that's the consensus. So why do you think investors would seem to be quite nervous about reform?
Yeah, well, as a former commodities trader, if there's a big consensual view, take the opposite trade position. I've always believed in that quite strongly. Look, I think one lesson, I mean, look, obviously we're talking about supply-side reform. One of the big frustrations is that since Brexit, businesses, particularly the small and medium-sized businesses, are now more heavily regulated, more penalised by HMRC and whichever regulator is relevant to their area than they were before Brexit. It's a massive frustration. So do we want to reduce the size of the administrative state? Yes. Do we want to attempt genuine supply-side reform? Absolutely. Do we want to cut taxes? Do we want rich taxpayers to flee the country and young entrepreneurs to flee the country every year or come back to the country, invest, employ people, spend money? So that's the agenda. And people say, well, if you do all of that, you're kind of going to be following a little bit of the Quasi-Kwarteng budget, and the market's going to take fright. So that's where the view comes from. And I think the one big lesson from the Truss-Kwarteng budget is they did not propose to cut spending. They basically said, we won't increase spending in line with inflation. So for our programme to work, what we absolutely have to do is to say to people, we are going to reduce welfare spending. We are going to reduce excessive government waste. And I think if we do that, the markets will applaud it.
One of the big ways in your programme that you step back from some of the more sort of aggressive tax cut promises, said it's an aspiration, but one of the big savings in your plan currently is to get more money, to save money that the Bank of England currently spends on paying interest on bank reserves. So as you know, there's a lot of concern about that from the Bank of England. They think they're going to lose control over interest rates, which is a pretty core part of their monetary policy. And certainly bankers quite clearly see whether it's, I mean, I think you said 30 billion, 35 billion.
Yeah,
I think it's more like 20 billion. But that's a 20 billion tax on banks.
Yeah, look, that's less relevant now than it was because we're not going through the QE programme in quite the same way we were before, as you know. In fact, the opposite's been happening in some regards.
But that's where some of the savings come from, actually, is from the sales of the QT.
We were the only party to point out just how much this was costing. And I think that's what we're good at. What we're good at is introducing new debates. And it was very interesting. When I went to meet Richard Tyson, I went to meet the Governor of the Bank of England, which was a very interesting clash of cultures, I would say. And I just said it's really interesting that you're making massive decisions here that have a huge impact on public finances. And yet it's being done with no debate in Parliament whatsoever.
But that's not true. I mean, it's true that there's no reform MPs on the Select Committee, but they go all the time to give testimony to the House of Parliament.
Yeah.
The government controls...
And these subjects...
dictates these policies, actually. Part of these agreements are agreements with the Treasury of what they've been doing.
And these subjects don't get talked about properly. You know, there's no proper open debate, and frankly, the committee system in the UK doesn't get the coverage, doesn't get the publicity. We have not had any debate in the floor of the House of Commons on this subject at all.
But you say you're going to do it. It's a part of your plan. It's not just part of your plan to discuss it.
No, we're going to do it.
At least 20 billion.
We're going to do it.
You're going to tax the banks 20 billion.
Some of the banks won't like it. You're quite right.
They will all pass it on to their consumers.
Well, I don't like the banks very much because they debanked me, didn't they? And wouldn't give me an account and tried to force me out of the country. No, look, this will be tough for banks to accept. I get that.
But how do you think they're going to pay the 20 billion?
I'm sorry, but the drain on public finances is just too great.
But how do they make their money? If they don't make it there, don't you think... I mean, it's pretty clear. It's going to go on to interest margin. It's going to go on to the mortgage costs and the interest rates they charge your voters.
Or they become more efficient, or they cut costs, or they do whatever. This money, they should not have had this money over... Look, Frank...
Right, let's switch focus, staying in Davos, but now to Chancellor Friedrich Merz of Germany.
President rebranded, ladies and gentlemen, the calm and peace up here on the magic mountain in Davos is at stark contrast to a world whose old order is unraveling at breathtaking pace. Let me share with you how the new German government is looking at these tectonic shifts and how we are addressing them. These shifts have the most profound ramifications for our freedom, for our security, and for our prosperity. In these weeks and months, we are witnessing a new era has already begun. Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine has been the most drastic expression so far. But change runs much deeper. China, with strategic foresight, has worked its way into the ranks of the great powers. The United States' global pole position is being challenged. And Washington reacts by radically reshaping its foreign and security policy. We have entered a time of great power politics. The international order of the past 3 decades, anchored in international law, has always been imperfect. Today, its very foundations have been shaken. This new world of great powers is being built on power, on strength, and when it comes to it, on force. It's not a cozy place. We do not have to accept this new reality as fate. We are not at the mercy of this new world order. We do have a choice. We can shape the future. To succeed, we must face harsh realities and chart our course with clear-eyed realism. 2 days ago, Mark Carney said in this hall from this place, we must no longer rely only on the power of our values. We must also recognize the value of our power. I share that view. And when I look into this room, into this hall, I want to say most of us share it. And that is a good starting point. European friends, if I may say so, our power today rests on 3 pillars: our security, our competitiveness, and our unity. First, we must invest massively in our ability to defend ourselves, and we are doing this. Second, we must rapidly make our economies competitive, and we are doing this. Third, we must stand closer together among Europeans and among like-minded partners. we are doing this. As we forge ahead, we must never forget one thing. A world where only power counts is a dangerous place. First for small states, then for the middle powers, and ultimately for the great ones. I do not say this lightly. In the 20th century, my country, Germany, went down this road to its bitter end. It pulled the world into a black abyss. So let us bear in mind, our greatest strength remains the ability to build partnerships and alliances among equals, based on mutual trust and respect. I remind you, after 1945, the United States of America inspired us Germans to embrace this logic. On this foundation, NATO became the strongest alliance in history. This is why we hold true this idea. Now, in recent days, the United States administration has vehemently demanded greater influence in Greenland. Washington has argued that this is an imperative to counter security threats in the high north. We welcome that the United States is taking the threat posed by Russia in the Arctic seriously. This threat is itself an expression of great power rivalry. It is aimed both at Europe and the United States. We experience it daily in hybrid attacks in the Baltic Sea and in Russia's winter war against the people of Ukraine. We share the conviction that as European NATO allies, we must do more to secure the High North as NATO. This is a common transatlantic interest. Germany is doing just that. We are doing it in the framework of NATO, and we will do more. Our neighbors and partners in Europe, including Denmark and the people of Greenland, can count on our solidarity. We will protect Denmark, Greenland, the North, from the threat posed by Russia. We will uphold the principles on which the transatlantic partnership is founded, namely sovereignty and territorial integrity. We support talks between Denmark, Greenland, the United States on the basis of these principles. I have discussed this with President Trump, Prime Minister Frederiksen, Secretary General Mark Rutte, and others in these days. The aim of these talks is to agree for closer cooperation amongst allies in the High North and beyond. It is good news that we are making steps into that right direction. I welcome President Trump's remarks from last night. This is the right way to go. This is the right way because any threat to acquire European territory by force would be unacceptable. And, ladies and gentlemen, new tariffs would also undermine the foundations of transatlantic relations. If they are put in place, Europe's answer would be united, calm, measured, and firm. As we proceed, we are guided by a clear compass. Firstly, in the new age of great powers, Europe must stand together resolutely and sovereignly. And secondly, we should not give up on NATO. At the historic NATO summit in The Hague last June, we created the material prerequisites for this. Europe will invest hundreds of billions of euros in its security. It was a remarkable transatlantic success. Now we must repair the trust on which the alliance is built. Europe knows how precious it is. We feel deeply that it can be the United States' strongest competitive advantage in an age of great powers. Democracies do not have subordinates. They have allies, partners, and trusted friends. Let me paraphrase this.
German Chancellor Friedrich Merz there taking a fairly tough line on some of the recent US action. Perhaps we can guess that he's had to water it down a little bit, given the better news or less poor news overnight on the topic of US threats to Greenland, but a tone there more akin to that of Mark Carney's from Canada a few days ago than the UK's conciliatory approach. We'll continue to monitor that from Friedrich Merz and come back to all of the headlines from Davos at the top of the hour. But for now, we're going to have a quick look at the weather.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News weather.
It'll turn colder over the weekend, but the next few days look mostly mild and unsettled. There's a Met Office amber warning for impactful rain over parts of eastern Scotland, with over 100 millimetres possible on some hills. Cloud will be quite extensive this morning with widespread showers or longer spells of rain, but Central Ireland looks mainly fine.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News weather.
We're talking diets next. January, after a time when people are trying to do the right thing, we'll be talking that coming up in a few moments.
I'm Cordelia Lynch, Sky's Asia correspondent, based here in Bangkok.
These slums, once gripped by fear and death.
There is far less bloodshed now, but it hasn't gone away.
Who's asking you to kill?
The police will give me the orders, and after I kill the target, I throw the gun away.
We try our best to uncover and unpick a fast-changing and deeply complex region.
These large waterways provided an excellent source of body disposal.
This is the Buriganga River, where victims who'd allegedly been shot dead were dumped.
Sheikh Hasina, how confident are you that she will stand trial?
She will stand trial, there's no doubt about that.
We're going to take you to the very heart of a criminal network, going undercover inside Southeast Asia's scam centres for the very first time.
We won't have any problems with police, it's okay. Just seen Imran Khan leave, and as we understand it, he's just been shot in the leg.
They have decided that the only way they'll allow elections is if I am inside jail or killed.
Sky News get the full story first.
Chinese vessels start encircling the boat we're on, blocking its path.
The Chinese are now deploying water cannons, firing it directly towards our boat. We've discovered doctors across Delhi dishing out pills like this, claiming they will provide a lifelong cure for homosexuality.
Rohingya people fleeing an escalating civil war.
The situation here in Cox's is desperate. An already insecure place does feel a lot more precarious.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist. A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
Welcome back. TV chef Rosemary Schrager is here to discuss her new... It's actually not a book, your new cookbook. It's online.
It's all online, and it's actually very exciting because when I was asked to do it by Newman's, who I've collaborated with, and it's got lots of tips and hints, and it's all about cravings. Now, the thing is, people always think, well, you're weak, you crave for this, but it's nothing to do with weakness. It's not a moral failure inside you at all. It's actually to do with biological inside our bodies. We crave, our brain craves for things, like you crave for things, I'm sure you do.
Well, we were just discussing
yeah.
crisps, chips...
Yeah, well, that's not good for you, see, that's not good, but
So you're criticising my cravings?
No, I'm not criticising your cravings, no way. What I've produced is healthy recipes that actually you can go to cravings and not put on weight.
Potatoes, all right, that's a vegetable.
Yeah, so what do I do if I crave crisps? Salt and vinegar, McCoy. Oh, no, salt and vinegar. Oh, didn't mention.
Well, I mean, have a bit of frittata. I mean, you can have a bit of potato in the frittata with the egg and everything. It's a balance of protein and fibre.
I do like a frittata.
And
that sounds quite nice.
It's quite nice to have it in the fridge already done. So I'm actually very excited, and because, you know, when I think of diet, this is not diet failure. I fail on every diet, especially at this time of year when there's so much food noise out there. I failed by about the third week. You know, I can't keep it going.
It's a hard time to eat healthily January, though. This is when we need something to, like, keep us going, isn't it?
Well, this is why it's all very good, and this is why with the amount of protein, say I've done a sort of takeaway, it's like a Chinese takeaway, where I've done some salmon and some wholemeal pasta and things like noodles, things like that. If you go to the supermarket, the little pieces are about 120 grams, 130 grams. That's not going to fill anybody up. So my weights are about 170 to 180. So you actually get proper. So what happens? Your body says, "Oh, I'm satisfied. I'm very happy now."
Love it.
Yes, which is actually really important.
Yeah. So embrace cravings, but you can do so healthily.
Yes, this is exactly what it's all about. Embrace the craving, because we all have cravings. Our body shouts for cravings, especially when maybe you're depressed, you're fatigued, you're lonely, maybe a horrible day like it is today. Could be anything.
Rosemary, we really appreciate your time. Sorry we got squeezed.
I know, it's very quick, but at least we've done it. But they can go on the website, newman.com.
We'll have a word with the guys in Davos.
Yes,
where we'll be back out with all the news in Davos after this short break.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
Good morning, it's 9 o'clock. Welcome to Mornings with Ridge and Frost.
With Sophy and Wilf, a very good morning from me as well. Lots to get to.
Donald Trump's tariff threat might be off, but is the damage done? Germany's Chancellor joins Canada's Prime Minister railing against the US President.
We must never forget one thing. A world where only power counts is a dangerous place.
President Zelensky arrives at the summit for a meeting with Donald Trump as the US President's peacemaker-in-chief says talks on a Ukraine peace are now at the end.
I think we've got it down to one issue, and we have discussed iterations of that issue, and that means it's solvable.
Police hope new DNA evidence might finally catch the killer of Diane Sindel in a case that saw one man wrongly imprisoned for 4 decades.
Lots more coming from Davos this morning, including more from President Trump. We'll take you to his remarks live when they begin in about half an hour.
And we're also looking at water. Residents raging against South East Water in Tunbridge Wells after repeated issues and still no word from the boss.
A very good morning to you. Things moving fast at the World Economic Forum in Davos this morning. In the last few minutes, we've heard from the German Chancellor, who told the summit that the old world order is unravelling at breathtaking pace.
And look, this comes just a day after Donald Trump spared European countries from tariffs after agreeing to what he called a framework for the future of Greenland. I think everyone is still kind of reeling and trying to work out what is that framework and what is going on.
But the tone set by Friedrich Merz indicates a change in the relationship between the US and European leaders.
We have entered a time of great power politics. The international order of the past 3 decades, anchored in international law, has always been imperfect. Today, its very foundations have been shaken. This new world of great powers is being built on power, on strength, and when it comes to it, on force. It's not a cozy place.
So you can see there some of the reaction from the European leaders, still pretty bruised, I think it's fair to say. We're trying to get to the bottom of what the details of this Greenland deal actually are. We spoke to the Foreign Secretary, Yvette Cooper, a little bit earlier on from Davos and asked her a number of times if she knew what was agreed. Because the question obviously was, do you know what is in the deal? It doesn't sound to me like from that answer like you do. And Donald Trump says everybody's very happy with the deal. I mean, how can we be happy with it if we don't know what's in it?
Well, I think there are 2 things now that I would expect to happen. The first is a return to some of the discussions that Denmark and Greenland had asked for with the United States, where they had begun those discussions in Washington last week, and that's what they want to focus on, is some very practical discussions about Greenland's security, whilst being very, very clear that Greenland's sovereignty is not up for negotiation.
It's so interesting seeing the fact, the 2 big developments, clearly, while we don't know what's in the deal, we don't know how long this slightly less negative tone is going to last, but he's taken tariffs off the table, due to come in on the 1st of February, and he said he doesn't plan to use military force, never did. So clearly that's a way better position than some of the worst fears over the last couple of days. What I do think is interesting is, we just took some of Friedrich Merz's speech, you know, everyone's been reflecting on Mark Carney's speech. 2 big points on that. One is they've taken a very tough line, clearly. So are we therefore seeing President Trump caving in the face of a tough response from Europe and Canada? And on top of that, we're all focused on it, whereas we're not. Greatest respect to the Foreign Secretary, Rachel Reeves, and the Business Secretary who are there. Most of their little comments are kind of lost in the wayside. So we are somewhat a bystander on this change in tone from the President, as much as it's good news and everyone will be pleased that the tone has changed. I'm not so sure what impact we've had to change his mind.
I think this is it. I mean, particularly when Keir Starmer's not actually there. You were talking about taco earlier. Just explain this. I love this. This is.
Well, I think it's become quite widespread this now.
Yeah.
Trump always chickens out, exactly. Which I think is clearly something that happened in and around the tariffs last year. They started incredibly high on every single country, and we've ended up down here. The question is that always his aim, scare people, end up with something else down the line? Or was it, as I think most people would assume, in particular the bond markets last April that fell out of bed and scared them, so they backed down kind of more quickly than they would have wished for? And I don't know, some questions as whether the bond market moves and stock market moves the last couple of days influenced the president's thinking on this. To me, it doesn't feel like that. I think there were other factors that were moving markets the last couple of days. But you know, did he back down because of strong rhetoric from Mark Carney, strong rhetoric from European leaders, or was this always his game plan?
We were saying that there's an awful lot moving in Davos, and there really is. One of the other things, of course, is on Ukraine. President Trump is saying that he plans to meet President Zelensky in Davos today. And also we've heard from the US Special Envoy as well, Steve Witkoff, saying they've only got one single issue that needs resolving in those peace talks. He said negotiations are solvable if Russia and Ukraine are willing. I mean, we don't know what the one outstanding issue is, of course. If it is territory, as assumed, that's a pretty big outstanding issue. Here's Deborah Haynes in Kyiv for us. Oh, Deborah, you're live for us. This is even better news. Deborah, how optimistic are you feeling about a particular deal when it comes to Ukraine?
Well, it is quite interesting. Well, it's, everyone is holding their breath, obviously. Everyone here in Ukraine desperately wants this war to end. It's about to enter its 5th year since Russia's full-scale invasion began. Of course, Russia has been attacking this country, though, since 2014. However, unless the deal that is finally put forward is something that Ukraine can accept, then there is not going to be a deal. The US and the Ukrainians have been working very closely to change the initial proposal that was put forward that had been kind of drawn up between the Americans and the Russians. But the key is now that is what is before Vladimir Putin. You've got Steve Witkoff, the US envoy, travelling with Jared Kushner to Moscow. They'll be meeting with Vladimir Putin later this evening, we understand. And this is what the envoy, Steve Witkoff, said, but he's been in Davos speaking to the Ukrainians too, before he left for Moscow.
We're at the end now, and I actually am optimistic. Spent the evening with David last night, with General Budanov, who's now Vice President Budanov, and Rustem. They've been amazing, by the way. To the Ukrainian people here, you have an amazing negotiating team. We've spent a lot of time together. I don't know how much, but it could be 100 hours together since Geneva. It's literally that comprehensive. And I think we've got it down to one issue, and we have discussed iterations of that issue. And that means it's solvable.
I mean, he didn't spell out what that one issue remaining is, but surely it's the territory issue. Vladimir Putin has said that he wants to have control of the Donbass, as well as Kherson and Zaporizhia, like 4 significant regions, along with Crimea. He wants them to be Russian. For Ukraine, their position has evolved. They have been willing to compromise, and they have said that the conflict should be frozen along the current lines of contact, which would mean that Ukraine would still be able to keep its troops in areas of, in particular, Donetsk, where it still has a lot of land, as well as Kherson and Zaporizhia. That is maybe a red line for the Russian side, and if that is the case, then I don't see any massive breakthrough today. But given this is Donald Trump involved, anything can really happen.
Deborah, great stuff as always. Thanks so much, Deborah Haynes, for us there in Kiev. Now, we are expecting to hear from Donald Trump in Davos again this morning, though talking about the Board of Peace initiative linked to Gaza, though seemingly broadening out. Let's bring in Adam Parsons, who's able to reflect on the latest headlines on this for us. Adam, what are we expecting from the President today on this, and how is it changing shape, the remit of this Board of Peace?
Yeah, well, the charter of the Board of Peace, which I
seen is not to do with Gaza. It is to do with aspirations for solving conflicts around the world. It is clearly a competition to the United Nations and a way of Donald Trump seizing control. For one thing, he would be the chairman of this Board of Peace effectively for the rest of his life and would then have the right to nominate his successor. So he would have a huge amount of control of this. Now, the question specifically about Gaza is to do with the layers beneath it. There's an executive board underneath this Board of Peace, for instance, which is full at the moment nominations of American citizens other than one other, which is Tony Blair, who I understand is in Davos at the moment having private meetings. I don't know if he's been seen publicly. Then you would have two layers beneath that, which are to do with the reconstruction, demilitarization of Gaza and the enactment of the peace plan. But right at the top is this Board of Peace, which is for leaders from around the world who either serve for 3-year terms or potentially have permanent memberships if they pay a fee of $1 billion. Now, what's happening today is that we are due to get nations signing up for membership of this. And I think a certain number of those nations are going to do so in Davos, effectively going to turn up, see the Americans, see Donald Trump and say, right, we're signed up for this. It's going to be fascinating, rather like sort of standing outside a red carpet party to see who turns up and who doesn't. My guess will be that the only European Union nation that signs up will be Hungary. Viktor Orban, their leader, is a close friend of Donald Trump. Already the French President, Emmanuel Macron, has said that they won't sign up. And the UK has also said that it is not going to be part of this, partly predicated on the fact that Russia seems pretty close to joining up as well. And Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, has actually talked of handing over this $1 billion, but has said that the $1 billion would come if America unfroze $1 billion worth of assets that have been frozen because of the war in Ukraine. Now, when you look at the other nations who are talking of signing up, well, Israel has done. Benjamin Netanyahu can't be in Switzerland to do that because there is an international arrest warrant out against him, but the Israeli president is there, so presumably will do the signing instead. Turkey, Pakistan, have both talked about joining. In fact, Pakistan has talked, or is the other nation that has talked about handing over this $1 billion. But to be blunt, you're not looking at a sort of long list of global democracies. You're looking at nations, quite a number from this region. The Saudi Arabians have talked about signing up. Indonesia has also, Vietnam, Morocco, not developed democracies and not, frankly, a huge number. But we will see who turns up to say hello and to sign the book.
Adam, great stuff. We certainly will be watching that later this hour in Davos, where we will return when it begins.
Now, £20,000 reward is being offered for anyone who can uncover the person responsible for a really tragic murder in Merseyside 4 decades ago. 21-year-old Diane Sindall was raped and killed in Birkenhead in August 1986. Leading to Peter Sullivan wrongly spending 38 years in prison. Our North of England correspondent Caterina Vitozzi has this report.
It's a brutal murder that's haunted these streets for decades. A savage attack on a young woman here in Merseyside by a killer dubbed the Beast of Birkenhead. In 1986, Diane Sindall was just 21. She'd finished working a late shift at this pub, but on her way home, she ran out of petrol. She got out of her vehicle, a blue Fiat. Then she was raped, beaten to death, her body left in an alleyway.
For decades, police thought that they had caught her killer. But last year, Peter Sullivan was released after new DNA testing of samples collected here at the scene. It is the longest-running miscarriage of justice in UK history. He'd served 38 years in prison. And now, once again, Merseyside police are on the hunt for Diane Sindall's killer.
Crime Stoppers are offering £20,000 to anyone who can provide information to them in relation to who was responsible for the murder of Diane. Back in 1986, a sample was recovered from Diane at the crime scene. Now, with the advancements working with Cellmark Forensic Services, we've identified a profile of a man from that sample. We didn't have that availability back in 1986. So, as you know, year on year, there are developments in that forensic work. So it's been key to this investigation.
The question is, after so long, is Diane Sindal's killer still alive? And does anyone know anything about what happened that night? Catherine Ivotozzi, Sky News, Merseyside.
I'll bring you any updates on that story, of course, when we get it. An awful lot at stake right now across the world, I think it's fair to say. We've seen that in Davos and also domestically in the UK too. On this programme, we'll be talking an awful lot about a potential ban on social media. And we can pick that up now with our next guest, who I'm delighted to say is the leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch, who joins us now. Great to have you on the programme.
Thank you, Sophie.
So you're coming off the back of this vote last night. The Conservatives won this vote in the House of Lords on banning social media for under-16s. Do you think that's now an inevitability?
Well, I hope so. I'm absolutely delighted, by the way, about that vote, because, of course, you know, we don't have a majority in the Lords, but what it shows is that there is a national consensus, in my view, across political parties, except Labour right now, that we do need to limit young people's access to social media. Social media is not for children. And these platforms are designed to be addictive, and they are profiting off the distraction, anxiety and attention of young children, and that's having long-term consequences.
You're probably from the same sort of generation as me, which I think is quite an interesting generation, because we didn't grow up with phones, apart from, you know, if you count Snake, where you could have, like, you know, 3 messages on your old Nokia. But we have become used to them in our adult lives. So I'm interested in how do you deal with it, you know, as a parent? What kind of rules do you have at home?
I have very strict rules, and I find them difficult to enforce. My children are 6, 9 and 12. I didn't give my daughter a smartphone until year 8, and it's locked down. My children, using the internet, have to ask permission. I use Microsoft Family Safety before they are able to access websites. And even then, you give them access to a website, more things happen on there than you're expecting. I'm at work. I can't see every single thing that they are doing. But I'm a very tech-savvy parent. I mean, I've got mobile device management on my daughter's Android phone. Most parents wouldn't be able to do that. And I think it's too difficult. This goes well beyond levels of parental responsibility. The platforms need to help parents, and I think the government needs to create the conditions for that to happen.
Would you like to see kind of like kids' phones, like kids' smartphones?
I would love to see kids' smartphones. So you remember the kind of phones that we had when we were growing up. I got my daughter, her first phone was a Nokia flip phone, you know, a dumb phone. It was pink, and I thought I'd have loved to have a phone like that, you know, in 1998. And she just looked at it like the most disgusting thing, like, why are you giving me this horrible thing? And I do think that we need products that are designed for children that limit the amount of time that they're on there. These things are addictive. Even when we as adults use them, you look up and you realise you've been on it for half an hour when you wanted to check something just for 5 minutes.
You've spoken before, and look, I'm approaching this very carefully because it's a very, very tragic situation, but you've spoken before about your cousin who actually took his own life, and you've spoken about his internet use before that. I just wondered if there's anything that you want to say about that and what it's taught you about, I guess, the pressures on adults as well as children.
Yeah, so he was a young adult, and he took his own life after spending a lot of time on social media, on the internet, looking at groups talking about fatalism, anti-natalism, that there are too many human beings on the earth, we're bad for the environment, and the best thing that human beings can do is take their own lives. And clearly he spent so much time on that, it influenced him. He must have been in a bad place already. But as we see with things like anorexia and self-harm, there are a lot of websites that have these things, and social media allows you to spend all your time just on that. The algorithm looks at what you like and continues to feed you more of that. Once upon a time, you had to search and look for it. If you have a social media account that recognises that you like these things, it brings them to you. And we have had colleagues just set up pure accounts pretending to be 14-year-old girls, and very quickly the content turns into self-harm. You don't look very good. This is what you should do to change how you look, and so on. And these platforms actually create and promote content that is harmful to children's self-esteem, their sense of self. They're addictive. They create anxiety. I think in 10 years' time, we'll be looking back and asking why we didn't do more.
Not everyone agrees. The NSPCC, which I think is very interesting, you know, Society about the Protection of Children, they don't agree with this. They say banning children from social media risks an array of unintended consequences. It would see children migrate to other areas online, and also children aged 16 would then face a dangerous cliff edge when they do start to use social media. I mean, they know what they're talking about.
Well, I fundamentally disagree. There's a cliff edge for anyone who starts using social media. I'd rather the cliff edge was the 16 rather than 10
the NSPCC,
or 12.
They're wrong.
I disagree with them. I completely disagree. And I think one of the things that we need to look at is how we are educating children about social media, what it is we're telling them. I think the most important thing is the ability for adults to access children, strangers to access children. That is something that other forms of technology don't allow. WhatsApp, for instance, it's who's in your contacts. But the ability for strangers to talk to children is something that we need to curb, and that's one of the reasons why I disagree with them.
There's a whole load of foreign policy stuff going on that I'm very interested to get your take in. First of all, should the United Kingdom be part of Donald Trump's border peace for Gaza?
I think we need to know exactly what it is before we're part of it. It is not clear, and I'm not surprised the government is yet to sign it. Other countries have raised concerns. I remember not that long ago, Israel was saying that it hadn't been consulted about some of the people who were being put on there. What we need to focus on is our national interest.
So you're at the minute, you think it's right to hold off then?
Let's look at what we're getting ourselves into. We don't need to rush into decisions. There is a lot of noise being thrown up in terms of what's happening with Greenland, what the US's intentions are. But given all of that, I think right now what we need to do is pause, take stock, and look at ourselves, what we're doing to make sure that we are a strong country. If the world is changing, if the rules-based order is fragmenting, what does that mean for Britain? And right now, we should not be certainly on any board with Vladimir Putin. That's something I'm completely against.
Yeah, which is I think the UK government's position as well. Talking about Putin, it feels like there is a bit more, I guess, like white smoke potentially coming from the US when they're talking about a Ukraine deal. They're saying there's just one outstanding issue. If that one outstanding issue is, as we think, giving up territory, is that a peace deal that we should support?
Well, I know President Trump is meeting with President Zelensky today. He has said that this is not something that he wants. We have said that Ukraine should not be forced to give up territory. But we all want to see this war come to an end. It's costing all of Europe, not just in money, but energy costs. It is destroying the lives of Ukrainians. Even Russians, are dying. This is not a good war for the world.
Can I talk about Donald Trump? Because if I go back to your maiden speech, you said there is more to conservatism than economic liberalism. There's a respect for the rule of law, personal responsibility. Donald Trump is someone who threatens to take other countries by force. Is he respecting the rule of law, and will you stand up to him?
We need to make sure that we stand up for the rule of law. If Donald Trump does things that we agree with and that are good for the British national interest, then we can, then we can support. When he does things that are bad for our national interest, that are bad for the rule of law, we should disagree.
So are you condemning him? Because it
condemning
feels
what
to me
specifically?
Condemning the fact that he says that he will take Greenland, that Greenland should be part of America, for example. Will you condemn that? Is that against the rule?
I've already said that what is critical is that the people of Greenland have their say. It's what they want.
That's not a direct criticism.
But he hasn't done anything yet. He's just saying things. And this is one of the things that I think that we all need to take a step back from. Donald Trump says all sorts of stuff. Some of it is real, some of it is not real. I've been very clear that the future of Greenland is up to the people of Greenland.
If Vladimir Putin said the kind of things that come out of Donald Trump's mouth on Greenland, you would condemn him?
Well, what has Vladimir Putin said that I have not I've not condemned? I've been very, very open that he is an enemy of the UK. He is an opponent. He's tried to kill people on UK soil. America is our closest strategic ally. It's our closest military ally. So we need to make sure that where they are doing things that we disagree with, we're robust. I have been very, very clear that he is wrong on Greenland to talk about. I've been very clear on that. I don't need to say it again and again.
I just think it's interesting because it doesn't feel to me like you have been very robust on Donald Trump.
What is the thing that you think I haven't said yet?
I don't think you've said that Donald Trump should not be using this language, that using this kind of language is inflammatory, that it is risking, you know...
But I have said that. I've said he is wrong to talk about that. I have said that using tariffs as a bullying tool is wrong.
So do you think that he is using...
I have said that self-determination is absolutely key.
So do you think that he's been using bullying tactics then on Greenland? Is that what you would say?
I think that he likes to make deals, and when people make deals, they start off with extreme demands. I think that a lot of that's what's going on. I think what is more interesting is what's going to happen with Iran. We've seen a lot of movement in that area. That is the big story. That is the big issue. Greenland is a matter for the people of Greenland and the Kingdom of Denmark. They are a NATO ally. We support them. I've been very clear about what Donald Trump should and should not be doing or saying, what he is doing that is not in UK national interest. The tariffs, for example, I'm very glad that he has now receded from that position. But I also don't think that we should be saber-rattling either. Who are our enemies? Who are our friends? America is a friend. Russia is an enemy. And we will treat them differently on that basis.
It's been a pretty bumpy time domestically, I think it's fair to say. There's been a few defections to reform. Can I ask you one thing about Robert Jenrick? Because he keeps pronouncing your name wrong. I know this is a bit of a weird question, but at his press conference with Nigel Farage, he called you Kemi Badenoch, not Badenoch. Do you think he's doing it deliberately?
Well, I've never heard him say Badenoch before. So this must be a new thing. But as I said, Robert Jenrick is not my problem anymore. He's Nigel Farage's problem. He has not been able to say where he disagrees with any of my policy positions. He's criticising the last government, which he was in cabinet a lot longer than I was. And I think that that's interesting. It shows people that this is really about self-interest, not national interest. The Conservative Party that I lead is one that has to be united. We are a stronger team, even though we may be fewer in number. It's always sad to see people go. But what I want people to see is that we're thinking about how we can make their lives better, not just about who's going to win an election and not deliver for the people of this country.
Just finally, I interviewed you when you were running to be Conservative Party leader back in October 2024, and I asked you the first question if you wanted to be Prime Minister, and you wouldn't say yes or no. You actually said, I'm very well aware of how life could change for the worse if that happened. Do you still feel like that, or would you say that you want to be Prime Minister?
I said a lot more than that, but I do want to be Prime Minister. I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't. But I don't want to be Prime Minister just so I can be Prime Minister. I want to do it because I know that this country needs a lot of fixing. I've been very clear that there are many things that aren't going well. Our politics is broken, our government is broken, but we are still a great country. Yes, we need to improve things like the NHS. Yes, we need to, make sure there are no potholes. Immigration is too high. We have a serious problem on our borders. That's why I've said we need to leave the ECHR. We need growth. Let's abolish stamp duty, get the housing market going, get jobs. There's a lot that we
squeeze them
do.
all in. Well
yes,
done.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I want people to know what I'm about. And to do these things, yes, I do need to be Prime Minister. But I want people to understand that it is about serving them. This is about public service, not about self-promotion.
Kemi Badenoch, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Sophie.
Coming up, we are going to be returning to Davos. We're going to be looking at Donald Trump. An awful lot still to come. Don't go anywhere.
Welcome back. A reminder of the top stories this hour. Donald Trump has dropped the threat of tariffs against Europe after coming to an agreement over Greenland's future. The US president says a solution has been found and that a framework deal is being drawn up.
A senior US official has claimed there's only one more issue that needs to be resolved in peace talks for Ukraine. Steve Witkoff, Donald Trump's special envoy, confirmed he's going to be heading to Moscow for negotiations with Vladimir Putin.
Crime Stoppers is offering a £20,000 reward for fresh information on the brutal murder of 21-year-old Diane Sindel in Merseyside 4 decades ago. Peter Sullivan served 38 years in prison for the crime, but was released last year after new forensic testing overturned his conviction. We are continuing to monitor the situation in Davos, where Donald Trump's event in and around his Board of Peace is expected to start soon. We think he's going to walk down that very corridor in the next, well, any minute. It's meant to start around past, so we'll continue to monitor that and bring it to you when he does walk down. But for now, let's speak to Sir Simon Fraser, the former head of the Foreign Commonwealth Office, chair of Chatham House and co-founder of Flint Global. A very good morning to you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning.
Better news, less bad news on Greenland in the last 24 hours?
Yeah, I think we are sort of breathing a sigh of relief this morning. The threat of military action has been withdrawn. The threat of tariffs has been withdrawn or at least suspended. And we have apparently a framework for a negotiation. So that's good news. But it's too soon to sort of bring out the champagne because we don't know what that framework is, what the terms of the negotiation are going to be, and indeed whether it will be successful. So there's still a lot to do, but better news.
Do you think that this was all his way of negotiating? Terrify people with an extreme claim, end up with something only marginally different from what existed before, in which case we don't have to overthink the long-term consequences of this, or do you think it's much more serious than that?
Well, partly that. I mean, there's where we are and there's how we got to where we are. And frankly, how we got to where we are is a much less positive story because it was a story of President Trump negotiating through coercion with his allies. His speech yesterday, I thought, was quite shocking, really, and there were gratuitous insults for allies, including the United Kingdom, and there were some sort of inaccuracies in it. So it wasn't an edifying episode, and I think it's left a very serious set of consequences because wherever we go on Greenland, it will have damaged trust and confidence in the alliance between allies on the European side, and people will, as Mark Carney has done, people will draw consequences from that.
On that very note, do you think there's an element of President Trump backing down because of speeches like Mark Carney's and indeed actions, striking more trade agreements with China as he did at the weekend, and that in light of that, we look a little bit soft?
Well, I think that he probably never was seeking the maximal outcome that he talked about. I think that Donald Trump probably had something in mind, if he had anything in mind clearly, which was less than total sort of occupation or ownership of Greenland. So we don't know exactly what the influences were that led him to the outcome. I think there was some domestic opposition. I think there was strength amongst European allies and the Canadians and other NATO allies in firming up their resistance to what he was doing. And so, a combination of factors. I don't think that we looked weak. If you're referring to the United Kingdom, I think actually Keir Starmer handled this reasonably well, given the position that the United Kingdom has in these things. He stuck to his principles. I thought he handled PMQs quite well, and he broadly aligned with the Allies. Clearly, some different Europeans took slightly different positions, some more forward than others, but there was clearly coordination between them.
Looking forward, how much do we need to think about our reliance when it comes to many things, but particularly defence and security on the US?
So, that is where I think Mark Carney is right. I think there are three things we've got to do. We've got to maintain the relationship with the United States, because it's very important. We need to stay aligned where we can. But at the same time, we've got to try and find ways of reducing our dependence over time, because clearly we can't rely on the US in the way that we used to. And that means building our domestic resilience, our defence spending and elsewhere. And thirdly, we've got to work on other relationships. This is what Carney's talking about, with other countries that see the world the way we do, in Europe and beyond Europe.
How far off are we when it comes to the middle point on defence capability and defence spending? So is it a sea change? Is it a tick up in spending?
Well, clearly we are, and everybody recognises we're a long way away from it, but we are taking steps in that direction. You know, it takes time to build up military capability, and we have to recognise that. That's why we have to be careful in the way that we manage the relationship with the United States. We have to be sensible about that. But we're on the way, and I think that actually the government needs to be more serious about this. And to be honest with you, I think we will come to the point when the whole question about taxation and the allocation of public spending becomes even more acute, given the circumstances that we face.
Let's talk about Ukraine. I mean, clearly slightly more positive noises again from Steve Witkoff, suggesting it's just one deal left, 1 point on the deal left to get over the line. President Zelensky, we've seen pictures of arriving in Switzerland moments ago. If we do get a deal over the line in the coming weeks, does that trump everything of the last couple of weeks over Greenland? Would it be a huge achievement from the US or not?
Well, I mean, one of the consequences of the Greenland episode has been that the attention has been diverted away from Ukraine, which is, of course, a much bigger and more immediate issue. You're right. You know, Witkoff and others have been saying for a while that they're nearly there, that the deal is 90% done. I don't know what the outstanding issue is, but there are two big questions. First, you know, territory. You know, what is Putin demanding? What are the Americans trying to make Zelensky give? And secondly, the underlying point, does Putin really want this deal? Is he serious about it on terms which others can accept? So let's not jump to the conclusion that it's going to be done. If it is done, it's going to freeze the conflict. It's not going to end the underlying causes of that conflict. And it's certainly going to pose some serious questions for Europeans, again, about our role in underpinning it, in funding reconstruction and so forth. So very big questions remain ahead, even if we get a positive outcome.
Sir Simon, always a pleasure to catch up. Thanks so much for coming by, Sir Simon Fraser.
Thank you.
Let's have a quick look, check-in on the picture in Davos. And we are waiting, of course, for the arrival of President Trump, as we have been for some time. The corridor there, which doesn't look like President Trump has walked down it yet. We'll go out live as and when he does. It's not the classic red carpet, is it?
No, it's not. It's definitely not.
It does show that Davos, you know, the expectation from afar, it's all glamorous ski resort. I can attest that it's far too many people packed into a very small location.
Is this your own experience of going there?
My own experience, and I slept in an odd flat above a gas station in order to be able to go, but there we go.
Donald Trump probably won't be doing
that, but his arrival won't be the red carpet he's used to, if this is anything to go by. And the border peace announcement, I imagine, will be in a slightly grander.
Yes, because it really does feel like that is actually where the story is moving quite rapidly. Yvette Cooper, the Foreign Secretary, is saying the UK wouldn't be part of it. Kemi Badenoch saying that actually that is the right thing. They should wait and see who else is on it. We can go live now to our Middle East correspondent Adam Parsons in Jerusalem for us. Adam, what's your take on the latest with the border peace?
Yeah, I think it's very unlikely that you're going to get any of the EU nations signing up other than Hungary. Hungary will do because Viktor Orban is a close friend of Donald Trump. The French have said they're not going to. As you said, the UK has also said that. I think a lot of people are, to sort of paraphrase Groucho Marx, are looking at who's the membership and whether they want to be in that club. A big question will be, is Russia going to be on this board of peace? What we're told is that Putin is quite positive towards it, but is prepared to hand over $1 billion for this lifetime membership, but only if that $1 billion is taken from frozen Russian assets. In other words, would take America to unfreeze assets. White House officials suggesting that around 30 countries will sign up. By my reckoning, we already have an idea of about 18 or 19 of them. From this region, Israel will be on that list. Isaac Herzog, the Israeli president, is in Davos. Benjamin Netanyahu can't be there because of this international arrest warrant. I think the UAE will also be signing up. Saudi Arabia will be on the list as well. Then you've got the likes of Pakistan, who may also hand over $1 billion, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Azerbaijan, Armenia, Vietnam, Morocco. So what you're seeing here are not are not European countries, not in Canada, Australia, these sort of well-known, what you might consider sort of Western democracies. None of these appear to be on the list. In fact, frankly, the list is top-heavy with countries who are not recognised functioning democracies on that sort of Western model. But we wait and we see.
Adam, thank you very much indeed. Adam Parsons there, reporting from Jerusalem.
Now, frustrated residents in Tunbridge Wells have held their first meeting of a newly established community fight-back group after persistent water outages in the area.
I mean, we've reported on it many times because it doesn't seem to be really improving. Kent and East Sussex have faced disrupted water supplies for over 3 years now, and quite understandably, people who live there say they've had enough with closed schools and, of course, having to queue up for bottled water, all that kind of thing.
Here's our Tom Parmenter's report.
Put your hand up if you're happy to drink the water that's coming out of the tap. No, nobody. Oh, one, it's two.
They have left us in water limbo.
Very disappointing that South East Water haven't sent a representative here to speak to the community, and that's the least that we could have done.
All they want is a reliable water supply and are exasperated that their taps keep running dry. South East Water have repeatedly apologised, but they're not here to face you. What do you make of that?
I mean, I'm not surprised they haven't turned up. It's not just a question of investing a bit more in the infrastructure. It needs a complete overhaul. So I do think that if we can perhaps do something here and affect the first change in Kent or in Tunbridge Wells, perhaps the rest of the country can follow suit.
Before that, they want accountability.
I'm David Hinton, I'm the CEO of South East Water.
All they've heard so far this year from the man in charge of their water supply was when he was obliged to give evidence to MPs. He gave his company 8 out of 10 for responding to the incidents and 6 out of 10 for communications. At this school in Tunbridge Wells, it would be 0.
This is what my job is now.
That one's...
Now just check it's not the tap. Oh, but there is... But normally they all work, so...
It's kind of almost screwed us all over a little bit. So I'm quite worried for my exams. I don't want to be on a back foot.
Students need certainty that they can come and sit at these desks. But certainty is something that South East Water seem incapable of delivering.
They're treating us a little bit like idiots, to be honest. You know, they'll throw technical language in our faces and tell us about all the problems that are going on, but we haven't been given a single solution. So this school has had to improvise.
There are COVID vibes around needing to adapt quickly and being resilient.
How much has this cost you so far?
I estimate it to be roughly around £20,000. If South East Water have got the audacity to not provide us that money back, they are literally taking that money from young people.
South East Water has turned down our approaches for an interview, but the calls for transparency, accountability and action are only intensifying. Nowhere more than here. Tom Parmenter, Sky News, Tunbridge Wells.
Just to bring you the latest pictures from the High Court, this is Liz Hurley, who is attending court today. It's all part of Prince Harry's case against the publishers of the Daily Mail Associated newspapers. He's accusing them of unlawful information gathering, which they deny. Liz Hurley arriving there to give evidence.
Indeed, following, of course, Prince Harry giving some evidence yesterday. We're going to have a quick look at the weather now.
I hope we haven't forgotten anything.
Travel insurance, I tick that box.
Yeah, but remember what you forgot last year.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News weather.
It's going to turn colder over the weekend, but the next few days do look mostly mild, a bit unsettled as well. There's a Met Office amber warning for impactful rain over parts of eastern Scotland. With over 100 millimetres possible on some hills, cloud will be quite extensive this morning as well, with widespread showers and longer spells of rain, but Central Ireland looks mainly fine. Parts of Scotland should expect the heaviest, most persistent rain, with snow developing over the Highlands. Temperatures will be about average, with strong winds in the north, bringing the risk of coastal gales.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News weather.
We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be back out live in Davos, where we're keeping an eye on live arrivals to President Trump's session on his Board of Peace. He's not there yet. His press secretary, Caroline Levitt, is. We expect his arrival soon. We'll be right back.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
Welcome back. Let's get back out to the World Economic Forum in Davos, where we can find our Paul Kelso, who has been following up on the latest on Ukrainian peace negotiations with a special guest. Paul.
Yeah, morning, Wilf, from Davos. Lots going on here, largely as it has been all week because of the presence of the American president. Right behind me is the Congress Hall where Donald Trump will be scheduled quite shortly to address his Board of Peace, his big diplomatic mission. Some have called it a little alternative United Nations. Given that and given the focus on Greenland for the last 48 hours, Ukraine has felt like the forgotten war here. It is, of course, the most serious conflict. It is not very far from Davos, where I'm standing right now, at all. It has been the focus, one of the key focuses of this annual conference ever since the Russian invasion back in 2022. Ukraine has always had a big presence here, trying to press the case to get the money that gathers here to be part of Ukraine's reconstruction, but they're still waiting for peace. President Zelensky will be coming, we now know, to meet Donald Trump. They're scheduled to meet at lunchtime here. All week it's been unclear whether he would make week of the visit, he wasn't even scheduled to speak. He does now have a platform, a main address in the hall behind me scheduled, but it has been late in the day, adding to this sense that Ukraine is not front of mind, certainly for the American president, who many still believe holds the key to unlocking a peace deal. His advisor, Steve Witkoff, this morning has said they're down to one issue. Wouldn't say what it was, and he and the President's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, will go to Moscow this evening. So more moves on peace talks, but we've been talking about that for about a year. I've spoken this morning to Vladimir Klitschko, whose brother, Vitaly, is mayor of Kiev. Of course, many will know him as a world champion boxer, but he has become an unofficial ambassador for Ukraine. I first spoke to him about the war here 4 years ago. This morning we caught up with him again, and he spoke of the weariness of the Ukrainian people. He says their resolve remains strong. They're in the middle of their worst winter in 2 decades, with power cut off across the country, and he says they need help.
The message is clear. Now, during the peace talks, which must take place, but not at any price. The price that Ukrainians have paid is priceless. There is no price tag on lives that lost. And during the peace talks, killings still taking place in Ukraine every single day in different parts of Ukraine. We just want to send the message that we will stand strong, but without clear and understandable support of us, we will not stand for too long. Endurance does everything in life. As an athlete with athletic background, I understand that endurance beats masterpiece and talent, but also shows and beats the second largest army in the world, as we've been showing for the past 4 years. And we're entering the 5th year on February 24th of full-scale war, and 12th year, 13th year since 2014, since actual annexation of Crimea in the east of the country, when the actual war against Ukraine by Russia was started. So our
Paul, I mean, clearly a lot of the focus there on Ukraine. We're waiting for Trump's arrival at the so-called board of peace. All eyes this year have really been on those principal leaders on debates about military action or not. At what is obviously the World Economic Forum, have there been big business deals? What has Rachel Reeves and Peter Kyle achieved in being there, or has the attention been so much to these global affairs?
Yeah, there's no question. Because of Donald Trump's ability to control the agenda, this has felt more like a political summit. It's always a blend. It's part conference, part trade fair, part political summit, but it's been dominated by the geopolitics. Much of it stirred up and resolved in the last 48 hours by the president walking everyone up the mountain of potentially really serious action around Greenland, and then walking back down last night. Speaking to businesses here, and you'll have seen this reflected in the international market response. They've been pretty sanguine about this. They do accept the world is a more uncertain place. The political decisions that are made, largely because of a White House with a big American delegation here, vowing to rip up the rules of global trade and liberal economics that has certainly served the people who frequent Davos very well for the last 20 years. So they have to pay attention to the politics that's going on behind the scenes. I don't doubt big deals are going on. The British say they've raised $1.5 billion in investment. They've got another 4 or 5 worth talking about. They're pretty pleased. But they have been, certainly in terms of the public profile here, bit part players in the Donald Trump show.
Paul, great stuff. Thanks so much. Paul Kelso there for us in Davos.
Just to leave you with a little bit of breaking news, we are going through from Davos because we're hearing a bit from Mark Rutte, who, of course, head of NATO, has been absolutely instrumental in these negotiations and conversations with Donald Trump. He says that specific negotiation on Greenland will continue between the United States, Denmark and Greenland, but saying that non-Arctic NATO members will probably want to get involved as well. He also, interestingly, said that critical minerals exploitation was not discussed in his talks with Trump.
I guess these details showing now how far there is still to go, not least that he can only speak for Greenland to a certain extent as NATO chief and not speaking on behalf of Denmark themselves. Lots more sort of come from Davos throughout the day. As we said, President Trump due to arrive at his event around the border peace any moment now. We'll be back out live for that when it happens, and back out with Paul and Yalda throughout the day with other stories coming from Davos.
Yeah. Another very, very fast-moving programme. Thank you so much for being with me and Wilf. Coming up, of course, lots more on Sky News, including the latest from Davos.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.